Guess what? I sold my house, my brother-in-law Kevin said. My husband and I were really surprised, and we didn't know what to say. But the most surprised person was my mother-in-law. She looked really upset and asked, "Why? Weren't you supposed to come get me?" Kevin tried to calm her down and started to explain. "I'm Sandra. I work from home with my husband Robert. We love our peaceful workplace where we can take breaks whenever we need," I explained. Then my mother-in-law moved in with us. We were doing fine financially, so we didn't mind. "Why don't you both go out to work?" My mother-in-law would look at us with disapproval as she asked this. It made me feel tired, like we were going through the same thing all over again. The first time she questioned us like this, we explained that we were working from home. "But are you actually working?" I've told Robert the same thing. "Are you paying attention? When will you two get serious about work? Aren't you thinking about your future?" My mother-in-law couldn't understand our job. "Oh, I'm so worried. I wonder if I made a mistake coming to this house. Maybe I should have gone to Kevin's house," she would often sigh and say this. The Kevin she mentioned is Robert's brother. He married a wealthy woman named Carol. And it seems like he's living off her money now. My mother-in-law didn't know about this. Kevin asked us not to tell her. My goodness, Kevin's house isn't small like ours. It's huge, like a castle from another country. Well, I'm thinking of moving to Kevin's house eventually, which will be my new home. My mother-in-law would often say, hoping Kevin would come to take her there. But we knew deep down that Kevin and his wife would never come to get her. You see, Robert once suggested to his brother that their mother could live with him. But Kevin didn't want to live with her. So we ended up living together even though we were criticized for working remotely and called unemployed. We just accepted that's how she is. But then something happened that made it impossible for us to keep putting up with it. Out of nowhere, we got a call from Kevin. "He's coming over this weekend," he said abruptly, then hung up before we could say anything. What do we do now? That guy hasn't changed at all. Robert and I were puzzled. And hearing our talk, my mother-in-law leaned in, looking excited. "He's coming to take me. Please help me get ready to move," she said, pulling Robert towards her room. "Mom, Kevin isn't coming to take you. He probably called for some other reason," Robert said, worried. "But he didn't mention anything about picking you up when he called, did he?" I added. "I'm so tired of this house. You probably want to turn me into a housekeeper, but that's not happening," my mother-in-law replied with a scoff. We couldn't understand why she was thinking like that. Since she came to stay with us, she pretty much did whatever she pleased, didn't help with any chores, and relied on the money we gave her. Well, we weren't going to force her to stay, so we packed her bags as she asked and waited for Kevin to arrive. During the weekend, my brother-in-law and his wife showed up at our place. As soon as they walked in, they had these suspiciously friendly expressions on their faces. I had a bad feeling about it. Just then, my mother-in-law came out, looking excited. "You're finally here. Let me tell you, Sandra is not good at doing housework at all. So I have to do them, and Robert completely ignores me. Isn't that terrible?" she said, acting like she was the victim, then brushed past Robert and welcomed her brother into our home. "You guys don't mistreat Mom. There's no way we're doing that. We're giving her an allowance, and she's eating whatever she likes. Plus, Sandra is handling the house chores," Robert said, looking conflicted, but his brother seemed suspicious. Robert has always been a bit clueless, probably treating Mom badly without even realizing. And it seems Sandra isn't the considerate type. "That's right. Kevin really understands me," she said. Hearing this conversation, Robert and I couldn't help but frown. Despite this, we decided to entertain our guests and led the couple to the living room. We all sat around the living room table, with Robert and me on one side and the couple on the other. "Now, why are you just sitting there? Serve the tea," my mother-in-law demanded. "Huh? I thought you were going to make the tea, mother-in-law. What's this about making an old woman work? See, Kevin, Sandra is like this," she said, even pretending to cry. I was so stunned by her behavior that I couldn't even respond. Once I served the tea, the mood became serious. The truth is, we sold our house. Robert and I were surprised and shocked by Kevin's words. But the one who was most shocked was my mother-in-law. "Why? Why would you do something like that? Didn't he come to pick me up?" she asked, flustered, confronting Kevin. He tried to calm her down, saying, "Take it easy," and then began to explain. "We've been in debt, and even though we could pay it off by selling the house, we're broke and have nowhere to live, so we came here to see if we could stay. What debt? I tried to start a business, but it didn't work out. These things happen, you know, Kevin said with a laugh. Robert and I sighed in frustration. We only need to stay until we find a new house. Please, we have no one else to turn to, the couple pleaded, bowing their heads together. I think our expressions must have been mixed, but if they had nowhere else to go, we felt obliged to help. We agreed to let them stay temporarily in our house. However, we made it clear that they had to find their own place within a month. Okay, Kevin said, still laughing, and went to prepare for their move. After they left, my mother-in-law sat quietly, looking lost in thought. Robert and I assumed she was still processing everything. The next day, the couple's belongings arrived promptly. This much. Where are we going to put it all? This is going to be tricky. We might have to sell some things or rent a storage unit, my mother-in-law said as we discussed what to do with Kevin's belongings. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell on us. I've been thinking, wouldn't we be more secure in the future if Kevin stays here, so you freeloaders can leave, can't you? My mother-in-law's sudden statement left my husband and me shocked. If you insist, I can tolerate Robert staying, but I don't need a wife who can't do anything. Get a divorce then, Sandra's space can be used for all these packages, my mother-in-law eagerly demanded, looking at my husband for approval. What are you talking about? He reacted, as he usually did, completely surprised. Then my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them happily, but I was still shaken by her earlier words. My husband decided to ignore the situation for the moment and asked his brother to deal with the packages. There were more than I expected. Try to reduce the number, rent a storage unit, or sell some if necessary, my husband said. His brother glared at him and said, "What are you talking about? These packages are important, how could I sell them? And what if they get stolen from a locker? What if they get damaged? Are you going to take responsibility, bro?" My husband shook his head at his brother's selfish behavior. This is our house, you know. It's only fair that you endure some inconvenience, right? If you don't like it, find a place to live quickly and leave. But then my mother-in-law shouted, "What are you talking about? Didn't I just say if you two are not happy with Kevin and the rest, you can leave? You're basically freeloaders. You're not needed in this house. Kevin is trying to start a business and all you two do is loaf around the house, doing so-called remote work. You're a nuisance." It was like my mother-in-law was acting as if it were her own house. My husband and I exchanged looks in disbelief. My brother-in-law and his wife were surprised at my mother-in-law's words, but then they started to smirk. "That might not be a bad idea, Mom. It sounds good. It's a hassle to find a new place, so we could stay here. So why don't you sell this house to us, Carol?" My brother-in-law said, "I feel uneasy with you two around, so it would be better if you sold this place to us. And it seems like our mother-in-law agrees with us, so sell this place to us." My husband and I were stunned by their words. "What nonsense are you?" my husband started, but was cut off by my mother-in-law, who smirked. "See, both Kevin and Carol are saying the same thing. So what will you do, Robert? If you're going to divorce, you can stay here." My mother-in-law glared at me triumphantly. I prepared myself to respond, but my husband spoke up first. "Why you get to say whatever you want? Why should Sandra have to leave?" My husband was visibly angry, his voice raised. "Don't raise your voice like that. It's better without a burden around, right?" My mother-in-law retorted. But my husband responded with frustration, "You don't understand anything. This is Sandra's house." At my husband's words, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife gasped. My husband continued, adding to the tension. "This is the house that Sandra bought for our life together." What are you saying?" "There's no rule saying only the husband can buy the house. Besides, Sandra covers all of Mom's allowance and living expenses. Sandra said she'd take on that responsibility because your pension is minimal, and it would be hard for you to have financial freedom with just that." Robert glared intensely at his mother. Despite this, my mother-in-law seemed incredulous, looking at me and snickering in disbelief. "Unbelievable. Sandra just sits on the computer all day. She doesn't even do housework properly. Wasn't my allowance coming out of my pension? Otherwise, there's no way Sandra could afford to give me $500 a month." Moreover, my mother-in-law continued, "Sandra is the one managing my pension, isn't she? You might have told Robert otherwise, but I'm sure you're dipping into my pension." She puffed up her chest and glared at me. I glared back, refusing to back down. It's true that I've succeeded as a business owner. You're lying. Stop spreading lies about my wife. You should divorce this lying wife already. You can live here with me, Kevin, and Carol. Besides, there's no proof that Sandra isn't earning money. Here it is. With that, I pulled out my paycheck and showed it to her. The sight of it left my mother-in-law, Kevin, and his wife stunned. Since Mom moved in, we haven't used any of her pension. If Mom ever wanted to leave, Sandra has been managing it so she could live independently. But instead, Mom, you've been bossing Sandra around, interfering with her work. You're the problem. If you don't like Sandra, you should leave right now. I don't believe any of this, my mother-in-law retorted, refusing to listen to anything we said. Afterward, Robert and I sighed in disbelief, cutting her off. Well, if that's how you feel, we'll pack our things and move to a new house. You guys will be stuck with a mortgage. But if that's okay with you, don't come crying to us for help. If you insist, mother-in-law will leave even with a pension. Maintaining your lifestyle will be challenging, but I guess that can't be helped, can it? At our words, my mother-in-law turned beet red and yelled at us to leave. Wait, you can't be serious. We don't have to do that, do we? Kevin and his wife tried to intervene, but my mother-in-law gave us a fierce look and said, "Don't you dare talk back, Kevin. You're going to be a CEO, aren't you? I don't mind you using my pension, so just start a company and show us how successful you can become. I'll show you what happens when you defy us." Her words were filled with intensity. Hearing this, we decided it was best to no longer be involved with her or Kevin's family and left the house. Of course, the mortgage on the house remained, but we changed the ownership to Kevin's name. Some time had passed since then. While there was still some lingering dissatisfaction from that incident, being freed from my mother-in-law's sarcasm, we were able to return to our normal routine. While we were working from home like usual in our new apartment, my mother-in-law called my husband, Kevin, crying. She said Kevin took her pension money and disappeared a week ago. She and Carol, Kevin's sister, were left alone in the house and needed help. My mother-in-law was too upset to talk, so she passed the phone to Carol. Carol explained that since Kevin's failed business and selling the family home, their parents had cut ties with them. They hadn't been able to reach their parents since then. My husband sighed and said, "I knew it. He told them not to involve us because we had warned them before leaving. He said they could report Kevin missing to the police, but that we wouldn't help them." After hanging up, I was shocked by my husband's reaction, but he believed they deserved what happened, and I ended up agreeing with him. They kept calling my husband's phone numerous times. Whenever he reluctantly answered, Carol would cry about not knowing how to report Kevin missing. We were surprised she didn't know what to do and advised her to call the police. However, despite their efforts, they couldn't locate Kevin. Just when we thought Kevin might remain missing, we heard the news that he had been arrested for robbing a bank in another state. Apparently, he did it to pay off his debts. This wasn't his first time committing such a crime, and it seemed he was likely facing a significant jail sentence. Carol is stuck living with my mother-in-law in their old house because she can't go back to her parents' home. She's unsure if she'll divorce Kevin, but that's not her priority right now. She's working with a temp agency, struggling with her first job, but somehow managing to get by each day. My mother-in-law is in a tough spot too. Kevin took all her pension, and now she's left to repay his debts. She started working part-time to make ends meet. While my husband and I feel bad for them, we decided not to help and cut off contact. They're experiencing the tough realities of life my mother-in-law often talked about. Despite the challenges since my mother-in-law moved in, my husband and I are relieved to have returned to our peaceful routine.
Hey everyone, I'm Emma Thompson, 28 years old and killing it at my marketing job. I'm this close to buying my first house. Exciting, right? Emma, you've really outdone yourself this time, my boss said, sliding a hefty bonus check across my desk. I grinned. Thanks, Karen. This is going straight into my house fund. I've been saving every spare penny for months, and the idea of owning my dream home was finally within reach. I couldn't wait to tell my big brother, Mike. He'd always been my rock, especially after our parents split. Later that evening, I called him up. "Guess what?" I said. "I'm this close to putting a down payment on a house." "That's great, sis," he replied, though something in his voice was off. You wouldn't happen to have some cash to spare, would you? Just until next month?" I sighed. This wasn't the first time. "Mike, I'm saving up. You know that." "It's nothing. Don't worry about it," He brushed me off, quickly changing the subject. How's mom doing? Typical Mike, always deflecting. Same old, still refusing rehab, I said. Our mom's addiction had shattered our family years ago, leaving Mike and me to pick up the pieces alone. Growing up fast was an understatement. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from my boyfriend Jason. Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Proud of you. I smiled, pushing aside the nagging feeling that something was off. Lately, Jason had seemed almost resentful of my success, and I wasn't sure why. My best friend Olivia's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. Eartha Emma, you zoned out again, she teased. We were grabbing our weekly coffee, a tradition of ours. Olivia worked at a local bank and had been helping me navigate the mortgage application process. Just thinking about Mike, he asked for money again. Olivia frowned. Emma, I love you, but you've got to stop enabling him. Focus on yourself for once. I nodded, but deep down, I knew I'd probably end up helping him anyway. He was family, after all. As I walked home that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Another text buzzed from Jason. Running late, don't wait up. I sighed, unlocking my apartment door. The empty space seemed to echo my growing unease. I'd worked so hard to build this life, yet it felt like everything was balanced on a knife's edge. Little did I know my world was about to unravel in ways I couldn't imagine. The next morning, I walked into the bank, heart pounding. This was it, the day I'd apply for my mortgage pre-approval. Olivia greeted me with a smile, but her face fell as she looked at her computer screen. Emma, there's a problem. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Your application's been denied. There's a large unpaid loan in your name. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That's impossible. I've never taken out a big loan. Olivia's fingers flew over the keyboard. It says here, Emma, this loan was taken out using your social security number. My mind raced. Who could have? No, it couldn't be. I immediately called Mike. Did you use my social security number for a loan? What? No, of course not, he scoffed, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Don't lie to me, Mike. I can't get approved for a mortgage because of an unpaid loan in my name. There was a long pause. Emma, I didn't mean for this to happen. I was in trouble. I needed the money. I hung up, my hands shaking, memories flooding back. Mike borrowing from my piggy banks as a kid, asking me to cover for him when he'd stolen from Mom's purse. It was always the same story, the same promises. Desperate for support, I called my mom. Mom, Mike stole my identity. He ruined my credit. Oh, Emma, Mom sighed. I'm sure he didn't mean to. You know how hard things have been for him. Can't you just help him out this once? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Help him out. Mom, he committed fraud. He stole from me. Don't be so selfish, Emma. He's your brother. She dismissed me, and I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. Just then, Jason walked in. Hey, babe. Why the long face? I told him everything, hoping for some comfort. Instead, his response sent a chill down my spine. Well, what did you expect? You're always talking about how great your family is. Maybe if you weren't so naive. Naive. I repeated, stunned. Jason, I trusted my brother. He shrugged. Yeah, and look where that got you. Face it, Emma, you brought this on yourself. In that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time. All the subtle put-downs, the jealousy over my success. It all clicked into place. Calmly, I stood up. Get out. What? I said get out, we're done. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor. My brother had stolen my identity. My mom had sided with him, and now my boyfriend had shown his true colors. In a single day, my whole world had crumbled. I called Olivia, my voice thick with tears. Liv, I don't know what to do. I'm coming over, she said without hesitation. We'll figure this out together. As I waited, I stared around my apartment. I'd worked so hard for this life, for the dream of owning my own home. And now it felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But underneath the hurt, something new was stirring. Anger. Determination. They thought I was naive, selfish. Well, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I was done letting toxic people control my life. Little did they know, this betrayal wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning. I decided to dig into Mike's actions, hiring a private investigator. A week later, the PI called. You won't believe what I found, he said. Your brother's been running scams all over town. He's got at least a dozen victims. I felt sick. How deep does this go? Deep enough to put him away for a long time. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Alex, an old friend from college I hadn't spoken to in years. Emma, I heard you're having some trouble. I work in cybersecurity now. Maybe I can help. It felt like a lifeline. We met for coffee, and I spilled everything. Alex listened, then nodded. This is rough, but listen. I can help you gather evidence. We'll nail these guys to the wall. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Back at work, I must have looked like a mess because Karen, my boss, called me into her office. Emma, what's going on? You're one of my best, but lately. I didn't even know what came over me, but I told her everything. Instead of firing me, she said, Emma, I had no idea. Take whatever time you need. I've got your back. Meanwhile, Olivia had been doing some digging of her own. You're not going to believe this, she said one day. Jason, he's been embezzling from his company. I found suspicious transfers while reviewing accounts. I laughed bitterly. Of course he has. Anything else to add to the dumpster fire that's my life? Actually, yes. I think I have a way to expose him without implicating you. As she laid out her plan, I felt a spark of the old me coming back to life. I spent the next few days working with Alex, gathering digital evidence of Mike's fraud and surprisingly proof of Jason's infidelity. Turns out he'd been busy while I'd been working late. This is gold, Alex said, scrolling through the data. But are you sure you want to go through with this? It could get messy. I nodded firmly. They made their beds. Now they can lie in them. Olivia came through with bank records showing Jason's embezzlement. Karen provided references and documentation of my work ethic, just in case. As the pieces fell into place, I realized something. I didn't need to get my hands dirty. The truth would do all the work. I drafted anonymous tips to the relevant authorities, police for Mike's scams, Jason's company for his embezzlement. I even prepared a package for my mom, showing her just how deep Mike's manipulation went. Are you ready for this? Olivia asked as we sat in my living room, files and envelopes spread around us. I took a deep breath. I've never been more ready. I hit send on the last email, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The ball was rolling now, and there was no stopping it. Alex looked at me, smiling. So what now? I grinned, feeling more like myself than I had in ages. Now we wait, and maybe order some pizza. I have a feeling things are about to get interesting. Little did I know, interesting was an understatement. The storm I was about to unleash would change everything in ways I couldn't even imagine. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. The notifications came all at once, lighting up my phone like fireworks. My heart pounded as I swiped through. There it was, front and center on the local news. Massive fraud bust uncovered, suspect arrested. And there, staring back at me, was Mike's face. Multiple counts of fraud and identity theft, the reporter announced. The FBI is calling it one of the largest personal fraud cases in the state's history. Relief washed over me, tempered by a deep, inevitable sadness. It was over. Mike's web of deceit, his endless pleas for help. But at what cost? My phone buzzed again, and this time it was Jason's ex-boss. Emma, I thought you should know we're pressing charges for embezzlement. Did you know anything about this? I took a shaky breath. No, I replied truthfully. But I can't say I'm surprised. I knew the hardest part was yet to come. Driving to my mom's house with a folder of evidence in hand, I felt the weight of years of tangled loyalties and shattered trust. She greeted me with a cautious smile. Emma, what's this about? Wordlessly, I laid out document after document. This is who Mike really is, Mom. This is what you've been enabling all these years. Her face crumbled as she took it all in, denial falling away to reveal heartbreak. I didn't want to see it, she whispered. Oh God, what have I done? The conversation was painful but necessary. As I left, I knew our relationship would never be the same. But perhaps, in its brokenness, it could become something healthier, grounded in truth rather than illusions. With Mike's arrest, clearing my credit finally became possible. Alex and Olivia guided me through every step of the legal maze. And finally one day, I heard the words I've been longing for. Emma Thompson, the loan officer, smiled. Your mortgage application has been approved. Relief and joy swept over me. I could have cried right there in the bank. Back at work, Karen called me into her office, expecting another wave of sympathy. I was stunned when she smiled. Emma, I've been so impressed by how you handled all this. How would you feel about heading up our new marketing division? I blinked. Karen, yes, absolutely yes. The day I moved into my new house felt surreal. Olivia, Alex, and Karen came by to help unpack and toast the new place with takeout and cheap champagne. To new beginnings, Olivia cheered, her glass raised high. Looking around at them, my chosen family, I felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. They'd stood by me through every dark moment, every doubt. I couldn't have done this without you, I managed, voice thick. To Emma, Alex grinned, the strongest person we know. When they left, I lingered in my new home, feeling the quiet settle around me. The past few months had been a relentless storm, ripping apart illusions and shedding light on hard truths. I'd lost my brother to his own choices, seen my mother forced to face reality, and ended things with a man who didn't truly value me. But I'd also discovered a strength I never knew I had, learned that family sometimes isn't about blood, and found friendships that grounded me when everything else fell away. As I hung a photo of Olivia, Alex, Karen, and me from the housewarming, a deep sense of peace filled me. This was my new beginning, hard-won, and all the sweeter for it. I'd fought battles and emerged not just intact, but stronger. To anyone facing toxic relationships and tough choices, remember, you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone dim your light. Your happy ending is out there, and it's worth fighting for. Take it from me, I'm living proof. And if you were in my shoes, would you have exposed your brother's crimes, knowing it might shatter your family? Or would you have protected him, even if it meant sacrificing your own future? Hi everyone, I'm Emma, 32 years old, and I've got a story that might hit close to home for some of you. I always believed that family was everything. My grandmother, Margaret, was the glue that held our family together. She was this tiny woman with the biggest heart you could imagine. I spent countless weekends at her house, baking cookies and listening to her stories about the good old days. Emma, dear, she'd say, her eyes twinkling, family is like a patchwork quilt. Each piece may be different, but together they make something beautiful. Those words stuck with me, shaping my views on family and forgiveness. Even when my cousins, Jack and Sarah, would tease me relentlessly during family gatherings, I'd remind myself, their family. They don't really mean any harm, . One Thanksgiving stands out in particular. I was around 15, and Jack had just knocked over my science project that I'd brought to show Grandma. As I fought back tears, trying to salvage what I could, Grandma pulled me aside. Emma, I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. But remember, forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about freeing yourself from anger. Can you do that, sweetie? I nodded, not fully understanding then, but trusting her wisdom. Over the years, I often turned to Grandma Margaret for advice. She had a way of seeing the best in people, even when they were at their worst. As I grew older, my bond with Grandma only deepened. I'd visit her every week, helping her with groceries or just sitting together, chatting over a cup of tea. My cousins, on the other hand, only showed up for holidays or when they needed something. Where are Jack and Sarah? I'd ask, noticing their absence. Grandma would just smile softly. Oh, you know how busy young people are these days, but you're here, and that's what matters. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment toward them. Couldn't they see how much their visits meant to Grandma? But I pushed those feelings aside, reminding myself of Grandma's lessons about forgiveness and understanding. As the years passed, I watched Grandma Margaret's vibrant energy slowly fade. Her hands shook when she poured tea, and her stories became more repetitive. But her love for her family never wavered. One day, I noticed a stack of papers on her coffee table. What's this, Grandma? I asked, curious. Oh, just some boring legal stuff, dear. Nothing for you to worry about, she replied, quickly changing the subject. Little did I know then how important those papers would become. As her health declined, I found myself spending more and more time at her house, cooking meals, helping with her medication, and just keeping her company. Jack and Sarah, meanwhile, were nowhere to be found. One evening, as I was helping Grandma into bed, she held my hand tightly. Emma, my dear, she said, her voice weak but full of love. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You have such a big heart, just like I always hoped you would. Tears welled up in my eyes. I learned from the best, Grandma, I replied, hugging her gently. That night, as I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that our time together was coming to an end. But I held on to hope, believing in the strength of family and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Little did I know, a true test of those beliefs was just around the corner. The call came at 3 a.m. Grandma Margaret had passed away peacefully in her sleep. My world shattered. Through tears, I managed to ask about the funeral arrangements. Oh, don't worry about that. Jack's voice came through, oddly cheerful. Sarah and I have it all under control. Something felt off, but grief clouded my judgment. It wasn't until 2 days later, when I called to offer help, that the truth hit me like a truck. The funeral's today, Emma, Sarah said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Didn't you get the invitation? I hadn't. They'd excluded me entirely. Rushing to the funeral home, I arrived just as the service was ending. Faces turned, whispers erupted. I caught snippets of cruel remarks. Asterisk gold digger, asterisk, only wanted the inheritance, asterisk, took advantage of poor Margaret, asterisk. Jack approached, his face a mask of concern. Emma, we thought it best you didn't come, Jack said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. People are talking, about how you manipulated Grandma in her final days. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. What are you talking about? I was there for her. I took care of her. Sure you were, Sarah chimed in, her voice cold. Right up until you got what you wanted. Confused and deeply hurt, I left the funeral home in a daze. How could they think that? I'd been there for Grandma when they weren't. Before I could process it all, my phone rang again. This time it was Mr. Thompson, Grandma's lawyer. Emma, I need to see you in my office. It's about Margaret's will. An hour later, I sat across from Mr. Thompson, a kind-faced man in his 60s. He slid a document across the desk toward me. Margaret left everything to you, Emma, the house, her savings, everything. I stared at him, the words barely registering. But why? Why me? She trusted you, he said gently. She knew you were the only one who truly cared about her, not her money. As the reality sank in, so did the weight of Jack and Sarah's betrayal. They hadn't just excluded me from the funeral. They tried to twist Grandma's final days to make me look like the villain. I left Mr. Thompson's office in a fog, my phone buzzing with a message from my best friend, Lily. I heard what happened. Come over. You shouldn't be alone right now. Sitting in Lily's cozy apartment later that evening, the full impact of the day hit me. Between sobs, I told her everything. Those snakes, Lily exclaimed, furious. You can't let them get away with this. I don't know what to do, I whispered. I always thought family meant something to them too. Lily took my hand, her eyes fierce with loyalty. Then we'll figure it out together. Your grandma trusted you for a reason. Don't let her down now. As the shock wore off, a new emotion took its place. Determination. Jack and Sarah had shown their true colors, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't inclined to forgive and forget. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of grief, anger, and discovery. With Lily's help, I started digging into Jack and Sarah's behavior. One evening, Lily called me over to her laptop. Look at this, she said, pointing to the screen. It was a bank statement from Grandma's account, showing regular transfers to both Jack and Sarah over the years. I leaned in, frowning, but Grandma always said she treated us all equally. She wouldn't play favorites like this. As we dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Jack and Sarah had been manipulating Grandma, slowly isolating her from the rest of the family while siphoning money from her accounts. I couldn't believe it. How could they do this to her? I muttered, anger boiling inside me. Just then, my phone rang. It was Mr. Thompson again. Emma, I'm afraid we have a problem. Jack and Sarah are contesting a will. My heart sank. On what grounds? They're claiming you coerced Margaret in her final days. It's baseless, but it could tie things up in court for months. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. That's when I remembered the stack of papers I'd seen at Grandma's house. Lily, we need to go to Grandma's place. Now. At the house, we searched until we found what I was looking for. A journal hidden in Grandma's bedside table. As I flipped through the pages, my suspicions were confirmed. Grandma had documented everything. Jack and Sarah's visits, their constant requests for money, and even their attempts to turn her against me. This is it, Lily said, her eyes wide. This proves everything. Armed with the journal and the financial records, I knew it was time to confront Jack and Sarah. I called a family meeting at Grandma's house. When they arrived, their faces were plastered with fake concern. "Emma, darling," Sarah cooed, "we've been so worried about you." I didn't waste time. Drop the act. I know what you've been doing, the money, the lies, all of it. Their expressions shifted instantly. Jack's face twisted in anger. "You don't know anything. We took care of Grandma when you were too busy living your own life." "Really?" I shot back, pulling out Grandma's journal. Because Grandma's records tell a very different story. As I laid out the evidence, their facades crumbled. Sarah burst into tears, while Jack's face turned an ugly shade of red. "We're family," Sarah whimpered. "Can't we just forget about all this?" For a moment, I wavered. But then I remembered Grandma's words. Forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about freeing yourself from anger. "No," I said firmly. "What you did was unforgivable. You betrayed not just me, but Grandma's trust. I won't let you tarnish her memory or take what she wanted to leave behind." As Jack and Sarah stormed out, hurling insults and threats, I felt an unexpected weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time, I saw them for who they truly were, and I knew that standing up to them had been the right decision. In the months that followed, I focused on honoring Grandma Margaret's legacy. With Mr. Thompson's help, I navigated every legal challenge Jack and Sarah threw my way. Each one crumbled against the solid evidence we had gathered. As executor of her will, I made sure every one of Grandma's wishes was carried out exactly as she intended. The heirlooms she had carefully selected for each family member were delivered, along with personal notes explaining their significance. Watching them receive these precious mementos brought a bittersweet kind of joy, knowing that Grandma's love would continue to touch their lives. But the biggest part of Grandma's legacy was still to come. With the bulk of the inheritance, I established the Margaret Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting elderly individuals who lacked family support. People like Grandma, who had so much love to give, but not enough people willing to receive it. At the charity's launch event, I stood before a crowd of supporters and local media. "My grandmother always said that family is about more than just blood," I began. "It's about love, support, and showing up for each other. This foundation aims to be that family for those who need it most." As I spoke, I caught a glimpse of Jack and Sarah skulking in the back of the room. Word of their betrayal had spread, and the rest of the family had all but ostracized them. I'd even heard that Jack had lost his job over embezzlement charges, while Sarah's social circle had shrunk significantly as people learned about her duplicity. A part of me felt a twinge of sadness for them. But I quickly pushed it aside. They had made their choices, and now they were facing the consequences. After the event, Lily pulled me into a warm hug. "Grandma Margaret would be so proud of you, Em. You've turned something awful into something beautiful." I smiled, a deep sense of peace finally settling over me, something I hadn't felt since Grandma passed. "I just hope I'm living up to her example," I said softly. As weeks turned into months, the Margaret Foundation flourished. We opened a community center that provided meals, social activities, and support services for the elderly. Every time I walked through its doors, I felt Grandma's presence, her warmth, her unwavering belief in the power of family, and her love for bringing people together. One afternoon, as I was leaving the center, I ran into Mr. Thompson. He smiled at me, eyes twinkling. "Emma, I've got some news you might find interesting." He explained that Jack and Sarah had tried to start their own rival charity, hoping to salvage their reputations, but their past actions had caught up with them. No one was willing to donate or support their cause. "Karma," Lily said with a smirk when I told her the news later. "They're finally getting what they deserve." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "You know, I used to think forgiveness meant letting people walk all over you," I said thoughtfully. "But now I realize it's about finding peace for yourself. It doesn't mean excusing what others have done." "You're not letting them back into your life, are you?" Lily asked, concerned. I shook my head. "No, I've forgiven them in my heart, for my own peace. But I've also learned the importance of boundaries. They made their choices, and I've made mine." That evening, as I looked out over the city, a deep sense of gratitude washed over me. Grandma Margaret had taught me about the power of family, but life had shown me that sometimes family is what you make it. The story may have ended, but the conversation doesn't have to. What would you do if you were in Emma's shoes? Could you forgive Jack and Sarah, or would their betrayal be too much to overlook? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this. Your support means everything to me and helps keep these stories coming. Thank you for watching. Hello, I'm Sarah, a 28-year-old graphic designer who thought I was living my dream life in the suburbs of Chicago. 3 years ago, I married Tom. He was charming, successful, and came from what seemed to be a respectable family. We had a beautiful wedding, bought a quaint house, and started building our lives together. I truly believed I had everything figured out, but appearances can often be deceiving. Tom's parents, Linda and Frank, appeared friendly enough at first. Linda would often bring over casseroles and offer advice, whether I asked for it or not. Frank was boisterous, always with a beer in hand, and prided himself on being the best driver around. "I'm the best in the state," he'd boast. Sure. At first, their visits were manageable. A Sunday dinner here, a barbecue there. But soon it felt like they were always around. Linda would drop by unannounced, rearranging my kitchen cabinets as though I didn't know how to organize. Frank would take over our TV, blasting sports at full volume. "Tom, don't you think your parents are over a bit too often?" I asked one evening after they'd finally left. "Come on, Sarah, they're just being nice." "You're overreacting," he said. That word, overreacting, would soon haunt me. As time passed, I began noticing troubling patterns. Tom would constantly dismiss my concerns, always siding with his parents. He'd roll his eyes whenever I suggested spending some time alone. Little things would set him off, and then he'd brush it off, telling me to learn to take a joke when I felt hurt. "You're too sensitive," he'd say. Then came the weekend trip from hell. Tom's parents suggested we all visit their lake house. I wasn't keen on the idea, but Tom insisted. "It'll be fun," he said. "Stop being so dramatic." So I found myself cramped in the backseat of Frank's SUV. Linda sat beside me, chattering endlessly, while Frank sped down the highway as if it were a racetrack. "Frank, could you slow down a bit?" I asked, gripping the seat, my knuckles white. "Relax, sweetheart. I've been driving these roads for 40 years. I know what I'm doing." I looked at Tom, silently pleading for his support, but he just shrugged and went back to his phone. It was in that moment I realized, despite being surrounded by family, I was completely alone. As Frank took a sharp turn, tires screeching, I shut my eyes, wondering how I ended up here, with people who didn't respect me, married to a man who didn't seem to care. The tension in the car became unbearable as Frank sped down the winding road. "Frank, please, slow down. You're going too fast for these curves," I urged again. "Oh, lighten up, Sarah. I've driven this road 100 times, he said dismissively. Suddenly, a deer darted onto the road. Frank swerved sharply. The tires screeched and everything slowed down. The car spun out of control. I heard Linda scream. I saw Tom's phone fly from his hand. Then there was a deafening crash. Pain, unbearable pain, consumed me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. There was glass everywhere, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Sirens wailed in the distance. The next few hours were a blur, bright lights, urgent voices, and excruciating pain. I caught snippets of conversation. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, prep for surgery. I was terrified. Where was Tom? Why wasn't he with me? When I finally regained full consciousness, I was in the ICU, surrounded by machines beeping steadily. Every breath was agony. "Hey, you're awake," said Nicole, my best friend and an ER nurse. Her face was a mixture of relief and concern. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I've been hit by a truck," I managed to croak. "Where's Tom?" Nicole's expression darkened. "He's outside, with his parents. Sarah, there's something you need to know." Just then, Tom walked in, his parents following closely behind. Frank had only a few scratches and Linda looked shaken. Unlike me, they were all walking. Tom stood by the doorway hesitant. "Oh, honey," he said, but he didn't come closer. "You really scared us." Scared them? I couldn't believe my ears. "I scared you. Your dad nearly killed us all." Frank puffed up, looking indignant. "Now listen here." "Sarah," Tom interrupted, his tone patronizing, "you're overreacting. It was an accident. These things happen." I stared at him in disbelief. "Overreacting? I'm in the ICU, Tom." "Well, maybe if you hadn't distracted Dad with all your constant nagging about his driving." "That's enough. Nicole's sharp voice cut through the tension. Sarah needs rest. You all need to leave. As she ushered them out, I caught bits of their conversation drifting in from the hallway. I told you, she's always been dramatic, Linda said. Remember Thanksgiving? How she overreacted when Frank had a few extra beers. I know, Mom, Tom replied. I just don't know what to do with her anymore. Son, Frank chimed in, he can't let her manipulate you like this. Accidents happen. She needs to get over it. Tears rolled down my face as the truth hit me like a second crash. My husband, the man who promised to stand by me in sickness and in health, was taking his reckless father's side. They were painting me as the villain, the dramatic wife, while I lay there broken, in pain. Nicole returned, her face a mix of anger and sympathy. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Tom was like this. As the pain meds began pulling me under, one thought crystallized in my mind. I was done. Done with Tom, done with his toxic family, done with being the scapegoat. If I survived this, things were going to change. I just needed to figure out how. The weeks following the accident were a blur of pain, physical therapy, and a slow, grueling recovery. Each day was a battle, but I was determined to regain my strength. Nicole was my rock, visiting daily, helping me through the hardest moments. You've got this, Sarah, she'd say. Surprisingly, my coworkers were also incredibly supportive. They sent care packages, covered my projects, and even started a meal train. Their kindness was a stark contrast to Tom's family. Tom's visits became rare and brief, always filled with excuses. Sorry, babe, work's been crazy. You understand, right? His parents were worse. Linda would waltz in, armed with backhanded comments disguised as concern. Oh, Sarah dear, still in that wheelchair? I thought you'd be up by now. My cousin's neighbor's dog groomer had a similar accident and she was fine in a week. I bit my tongue. Engaging with her wasn't worth it. The real turning point came when my brother Mike flew in from California. One look at me, then at Tom's detached expression, and I saw fury flash in his eyes. What the hell, man? Mike confronted Tom in the hallway. Your wife's been through hell, and you're acting like it's a minor inconvenience. Back off, Tom snarled. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. Sarah's milking this for all it's worth. I heard the scuffle, the thud of someone hitting the wall. Then Mike stormed back in, his knuckles white. Sarah, I'm getting you out of here, today. As Mike helped me pack, I noticed Tom's tablet on the nightstand. A notification popped up from someone named Amber. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tapped it. My world shattered all over again. Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Sarah's still playing the victim. Dozens of messages, photos, and plans for secret rendezvous flashed before me. The evidence of Tom's betrayal was undeniable. Over the next few weeks, as I recovered at Mike's place, I began to plan. I reached out to Lisa, a lawyer friend from college. During our clandestine meeting, I told her everything. Sarah, what you're describing is emotional abuse, Lisa said firmly. We can build a strong case, especially with the evidence of his affair. I nodded, feeling a strange calm wash over me. What do I need to do? Document everything, texts, emails, witness statements, and be careful. Don't let them know you're planning this. With renewed determination, I threw myself into my recovery. Physical therapy, job applications, gathering evidence, it all gave me purpose. Then, out of the blue, I received an email from Jeremy, my old mentor. Sarah, heard about your accident. Hope you're well. We have an opening for a senior designer here in Boston. Interested? It felt like the universe was finally aligning in my favor. The day I confronted Tom, I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. I waited until Tom got home, his usual dismissive attitude on full display. Tom, we need to talk. Can it wait? I'm tired. No, it can't. I know about Amber. His face turned pale. What are you talking about? I calmly pulled out a stack of printed messages. Your affair, Tom. I know everything. Sarah, it's not what you think. Save it, I cut him off. I'm filing for divorce. His shock quickly shifted to anger. You'll get nothing. My family will make sure of it. I smiled, cold and certain. We'll see about that in court. In the courtroom, my lawyer presented a meticulously prepared dossier, text messages, emails, and witness statements from friends and coworkers documenting Tom's neglect and his family's emotional abuse. Your Honor, my lawyer began. My client has endured years of emotional manipulation and gaslighting, culminating in her husband's affair while she was recovering from a near-fatal accident caused by her father-in-law's reckless driving. Tom's face shifted between rage and disbelief as the judge reviewed the evidence. His lawyer tried to object, but the proof was undeniable. Then came the bombshell. Furthermore, my lawyer added, we have uncovered Mr. Evans's father's extensive history of reckless driving and multiple DUIs, which had been quietly settled out of court. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. I was awarded a substantial settlement, including the house and half of our joint assets. Tom was livid, but there was nothing he could do. As we left the courthouse, I overheard him hissing at his parents. This is your fault. If you hadn't pushed me to fight this, I could have settled quietly. I walked away, head held high, ready to start my new life. The aftermath was swift. Frank's driving record became public, resulting in a suspended license and hefty fines. Tom's company, alerted by the divorce proceedings, launched an internal investigation into his relationship with Amber, who was his subordinate. Meanwhile, I accepted Jeremy's job offer in Boston. Packing up my life felt liberating. Each box I packed was another step toward freedom. On my first day at the new firm, I was nervous but excited. Welcome aboard, Sarah. Jeremy greeted me warmly. We're thrilled to have you. Months flew by as I threw myself into my work, rediscovering my passion for creativity. My colleagues became my new friends, and slowly I began to heal. 3 years later, I found myself standing on a stage in New York, accepting the Innovative Design Award for a campaign I had spearheaded. As I gave my speech, a news ticker caught my eye on a screen in the back of the hall. Evans and Sons facing bankruptcy. CEO Tom Evans steps down amid scandal. I felt a brief pang, quickly replaced by a sense of satisfaction. They had made their beds, and now they had to lie in them. Later that night, surrounded by my new friends and colleagues at a celebratory dinner, I raised my glass. To new beginnings and true friends, I toasted as laughter and conversation filled the air. I looked around the table at the people who had supported, challenged, and celebrated me. These were my real family now. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. The road had been hard, but I had come out stronger. As I sipped my champagne, I smiled to myself. The future was bright, and it was all mine. The story has come to an end, but now we'd love to hear from you. If you were in Sarah's shoes, would you have confronted Tom about the affair immediately, or would you have waited to gather more evidence like she did? How would you have handled the betrayal differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and perspectives would help others facing similar situations. If you found Sarah's journey compelling, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories of resilience and triumph over toxicity. Your support helps us continue sharing these important narratives. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're stronger than you know. Hey, I'm Sarah Thompson. I'm 28 years old, deep in the trenches of my PhD in biochemistry at Westbrook University. It's been a wild ride, especially considering where I came from. Growing up, we didn't have much. My parents worked themselves to the bone just to keep food on the table. But despite all that, they never stopped pushing me to dream big. I'm the first in my family to go to college, let alone aim for a PhD. It hasn't been easy, but now I'm so close to the finish line, I can almost taste it. 3 years ago, I married Tom. He's a software engineer, smart as a whip and usually pretty supportive. We met back in college, bonding over late-night study sessions and cheap takeout. Things were great until his mom, Patricia, entered the picture. And let me tell you, Patricia is something else. Imagine the most overbearing, manipulative person you know, then multiply that by 10. That's her. From day one, it's been clear she has it out for me. Nothing I do is ever good enough for her precious son. Sarah, don't you think Tom deserves a home-cooked meal after a long day at work? She'd say, knowing full well I'd just spent 14 hours in the lab. Trying to balance my PhD work with family life has felt like walking a tightrope while juggling flaming torches. Tom tries to understand, but sometimes it feels like we're speaking entirely different languages. Then things hit a breaking point. My PhD defense is coming up, the big one. The moment I've been working toward for years, with sleepless nights, missed holidays, the whole deal. And out of nowhere, Patricia drops a bombshell. I'm throwing a surprise party for Tom's 30th birthday. She announces, all smiles. Guess when she plans to throw this party? Yep, the same day as my defense. I try to explain, Patricia, I can't miss my defense. It's crucial for my career. But she just waves her hand dismissively. Oh, Sarah, surely you can reschedule. Family comes first, you know. I looked at Tom for backup, but he just stands there, silent, his eyes bouncing between us like he's watching a tennis match. Tom, can you please explain to your mother how important this is? I ask, desperate for support. He clears his throat and says, well, maybe we can figure something out. Mom, is there any way we can move the party? Patricia's face hardens. Absolutely not. I've already invited everyone. Sarah, if you really cared about this family, you'd make it work. It felt like a punch to the gut. Torn between my dreams and my marriage, I watched as the two people who should have had my back turned away instead. As Patricia rattled on about party favors and guest lists, the walls seemed to close in. My hands shook, my vision blurred. This was the moment I realized I was truly alone in this fight. I retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I buried my face in my hands. How did I end up here? And more importantly, how was I going to get out of this mess? The week leading up to my defense was hell. I was drowning in stress, trying to perfect my presentation while fending off Patricia's endless demands. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped, another text from her with some new emergency for the party. Sarah, we need to talk about the cake. Tom loves my red velvet recipe, she'd say. I gritted my teeth. Patricia, I'm in the middle of prepping for my defense. Can this wait? But she'd always reply with the same passive-aggressive jab. Oh, I see. Your little school project is more important than your husband's happiness. Her guilt trips were getting old fast. I tried to focus on my work, but the constant interruptions were wearing me down. One night, I overheard Tom on the phone with her. I don't know, Mom. Sarah's been pretty distant lately. Maybe you're right about her priorities. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The next day, I confronted him. Hey, I heard you talking to your mom last night. What's this about my priorities? Tom shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing, Sarah. Mom's just worried about us, that's all. Worried? She's been undermining me at every turn, and now she's got you doubting me too. Come on, it's not like that, he said. You have been pretty focused on your defense lately. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Of course I have. It's the culmination of years of work. Tom, I thought you understood. I said, my voice barely hiding the frustration. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. I do, but maybe Mom's right. Couldn't you reschedule? I stormed out of the room, fuming. The betrayal stung deep. Everything came to a head the day before my defense. I was at my desk, trying to make some last-minute revisions, when the doorbell rang. Opening it, I found Patricia standing there, arms full of party supplies. Surprise? I thought I'd come early to start setting up. We have so much to do, she chirped, stepping forward as if she owned the place. I stood there, dumbfounded. Patricia, I told you I can't help with the party. My defense is tomorrow. She pushed past me into the house like I hadn't spoken. Oh, about that. I've been thinking, you really should skip it. Excuse me. Well, dear, this party is important to Tom, and let's face it, your little presentation can wait. Family comes first. I felt like I'd stepped into some sort of twisted alternate reality. My little presentation is my PGG defense. It absolutely cannot wait. Patricia's eyes narrowed. I see. So, you're choosing your career over your family. I always knew you were selfish, but this takes the cake. Selfish. I was practically shaking. I've bent over backward trying to accommodate you, but this is my future we're talking about. Just then, Tom walked in, looking confused. What's going on? Patricia turned to him, tears welling up. Oh, Tom, I was just trying to help with your party, but Sarah, she's being so difficult. She wants to abandon you on your birthday. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's not true. Tom, please, you know how important this defense is to me. Tom looked between us, his face full of uncertainty. I don't know. Mom's put a lot of effort into this party, Sarah. It felt like a slap. Are you kidding me? After everything I've sacrificed? Patricia seized her chance. See, Tom, she doesn't care about your happiness at all. Something in me snapped. You know what? I'm done. I'm so done with both of you. I grabbed my laptop and keys, barely able to see through the tears burning in my eyes. Tom reached for my arm. Sarah, wait. I jerked away. No, Tom. You've made your choice, now I'm making mine. I stormed out, my vision blurred as I drove, the lump in my throat growing with each mile. I ended up at Elena's place, my best friend since college. The moment she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me into a hug. "Oh, honey, what happened?" she asked softly. Through sobs, I told her everything. As I poured out the story, Elena's expression darkened. "That manipulative," she muttered under her breath. "You're staying here tonight. We'll get you through this defense, and then we'll figure out what to do about Tom and his monster of a mother." That night, as I lay on Elena's couch, my heart ached. But beneath all the pain, a small spark of determination flickered to life. There was no way I was letting them derail my dreams. Tomorrow, I'd show them all what I was made of. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, momentarily forgetting everything. But then it hit me all over again. My defense. Tom. Patricia. The betrayal. "Rise and shine, future Dr. Thompson." Elena chirped, way too cheerful for the early hour. I groaned, pulling a pillow over my face. "I can't do this, Elle. Maybe I should just." "Don't you dare finish that sentence," she cut me off. "You've worked too hard to let those jerks win. Now get up, we've got a PhD to defend." Somehow, I made it to campus, my hands trembling as I set up for my presentation. The committee filed in, and suddenly it was showtime. "Good morning," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "Today, I'll be presenting my research on novel approaches to targeted drug delivery in cancer treatment." As I dove into my work, something in me shifted. The fear and doubt melted away, replaced by the passion that had fueled me for years. I fielded questions confidently, even cracking a joke that made the notoriously stern Dr. Patel smile. When it was over, the room erupted into applause. Dr. Patel stood up, beaming. "Congratulations, Dr. Thompson. Your work is truly groundbreaking." I floated out of the room on cloud 9, only to crash back to reality when I saw my phone. 15 missed calls from Tom. A barrage of texts from Patricia. I ignored them all. Elena and our friend Mike took me out for celebratory drinks. As we clinked glasses, I spilled everything. "I can't believe Tom sided with his mom," Mike said, shaking his head. "What are you going to do?" I sighed, staring down at my drink. "I don't know. I love him, but I don't know if I can keep living like this." I couldn't keep living like this. Elena squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, we've got your back." The next few weeks passed in a blur. I started therapy, trying to untangle the mess of emotions I was buried under. Tom kept calling, alternating between apologies and accusations. I let every call go to voicemail. Then came the email that changed everything. A prestigious research institute offered me a postdoc position, my dream job. But there was a catch. It was across the country. I stared at my phone, Tom's number glowing on the screen. My finger hovered over the call button. But then I remembered his silence, the way he failed to stand up for me when I needed him most. I put the phone down and opened my laptop to accept the offer. The day I was packing up my office, Tom showed up. "Sarah, please," he began, desperation in his voice. "We can work this out. I'm sorry about everything with my mom. I'll do better, I promise." I looked at him for the first time in weeks. All I saw was a man who had failed me when it mattered most. "I'm sorry, Tom, but I need to do this for me. I hope you understand." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first, and it felt damn good. 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of research breakthroughs and self-discovery. I was thriving at my new job, making waves in the field of cancer treatment. My latest paper had just been accepted for presentation at the International Cancer Research Symposium in Geneva. I was prepping for my talk when my phone buzzed. It was Elena. "Hey, Elle, what's up?" I answered. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this. Tom's company just went under. Some massive fraud scandal. He's out of a job." I let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's rough." "That's not all," Elena continued. "Apparently, Patricia's been on a rampage. She's alienated half the family with her controlling BS. Tom's siblings aren't even talking to him anymore." I shook my head. Guess some things never change. After hanging up, I dove back into my work. A week later, I stood on stage in Geneva, presenting my research to a packed auditorium. The response was overwhelming. As I fielded questions from top researchers, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Later, I saw it was a text from Tom. Sarah, I messed up. I see that now. Mom, she's toxic. I'm in therapy, trying to figure things out. I miss you. Can we talk? I stared at the message, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to respond, to try and mend things. But a stronger part knew better. I was about to delete the message when another call came through from an unknown number. Hello? Sarah, it's Patricia. I heard about your success. I always knew you had it in you, dear. I was thinking, perhaps we could let bygones be bygones. I'd love to catch up and hear all about your work. I almost laughed. Patricia, with all due respect, no. You made your feelings about me and my work very clear. I'm not interested in reconnecting. Please don't contact me again. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Biotech Innovations, the leading biotech company in the country. They were offering me a leadership position heading their cancer research division. As I sat in my hotel room overlooking the serene Lake Geneva, I reflected on how far I'd come. The scars were still there, reminders of the pain I'd endured, but they no longer defined me. The story of Sarah, Tom, and Patricia had come to an end. Now I got a question for you. If you were in Sarah's shoes, would you have given Tom a second chance after he sided with his manipulative mother? Or did Sarah make the right call by prioritizing her career and self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions might just help someone facing a similar situation. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, 15, and I live in a fancy Chicago suburb. My life took a crazy turn when I had to deal with some serious family drama. It all started one afternoon while I was sketching in my favorite armchair by the window. I heard the familiar sound of Dad's car pulling up in the driveway. Excited, I dashed downstairs, eager to show him my latest artwork. Dad, you're home early. Look at this new piece I'm working on. I beamed, holding up the sketch. Dad, or James as everyone else calls him, gave me a quick glance and a half-hearted smile. That's nice, sweetheart, he said, barely looking. But listen, I've got a surprise for you. My heart raced. Was this finally about the art camp I'd been begging to go to? But instead of an art camp, in walked a tall, leggy blonde with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sarah, this is Veronica. We've been seeing each other, and she's going to be staying with us for a while, Dad announced. I forced a smile, but inside, I was freaking out. It had been just Dad and me since Mom passed away 3 years ago. We were a team, a duo. But now, fast forward a couple of weeks, and Veronica had completely taken over our house. She was redecorating, rearranging furniture, and worst of all, taking up all of Dad's time. One afternoon after school, I was venting to my best friend Zoe in the kitchen. I swear, Zoe, it's like I don't even exist anymore. Yesterday, I tried to talk to Dad about my art project, and Veronica interrupted to show him some dumb modeling photos. Zoe rolled her eyes. That sucks, Sar. Have you talked to your dad about it? I tried. I sighed. But he just keeps saying I need to give her a chance and make her feel welcome. It's like he's forgotten I live here too. Just then, Veronica waltzed into the kitchen wearing one of Dad's shirts, just his shirt. Oh, hi, Sarah. Didn't realize you'd be home so early. Your father and I were just napping, she said, her smirk making my stomach turn. I cringed internally. This is my friend Zoe. We're working on a school project. Veronica barely looked at Zoe before turning back to me. That's nice, dear. By the way, I moved some of your art supplies to the garage. They were cluttering up the living room. Hope you don't mind. And with that, she was gone, leaving me fuming. Zoe squeezed my arm sympathetically. She's the worst. Later that night, I decided to try one more time to reconnect with Dad. I found him in his study, going over paperwork. Hey, Dad, got a minute? He looked up, distracted. Sure, honey. What's up? I was wondering if we could have dinner together tomorrow night, just the two of us, like we used to. He hesitated, and I knew what was coming. Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry. Veronica and I have reservations at that new French place downtown. Maybe another time? I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. As I turned to leave, he called out, Actually, Sarah, there's something important we need to discuss. Family meeting tomorrow after school. Okay. I agreed, but a knot was already forming in my stomach. Something told me this meeting wasn't going to be good. The next afternoon, I walked into the living room to find Dad and Veronica already seated, looking way too serious. "Sarah, honey, sit down. We need to talk," Dad said. I perched on the edge of the couch, bracing myself. "What's going on?" Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided it's best for you to attend Oak Ridge Academy. It's an excellent boarding school upstate." My jaw dropped. Boarding school. But why? "I don't want to go." "It's a wonderful opportunity, Sarah." Veronica chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You'll get a top-notch education." Suddenly, a memory flashed through my mind from last week. I had overheard them talking in the kitchen. "James, darling, I'm worried about Sarah. She's always around. Don't you think she's ruining our romance?" "What do you suggest, Veronica?" Dad had asked. "Well, there's this fabulous boarding school. I had heard enough." Back in the present, I stood up, shaking. "This was your idea, wasn't it?" I pointed at Veronica. "You want to get rid of me." "Sarah, that's enough." Dad snapped. "This decision is final." I ran to my room, slamming the door behind me. Grabbing my phone, I dialed the only person who might help, Aunt Lisa. "Aunt Lisa, please, you have to talk to Dad. He wants to send me away." "Oh, sweetie," she sighed. "I'll try." But you know how stubborn Dad can be. Over the next few days, I begged, pleaded, and bargained, promising to stay out of their way, to be the perfect daughter. But nothing worked. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of Oak Ridge Academy, a huge, imposing building that looked more like a prison than a school. "This is for the best, Sarah," Dad said, avoiding my eyes. "You'll see." Veronica didn't even bother to get out of the car. I watched them drive away, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The first few weeks at Oak Ridge were a blur. Strict rules, demanding classes, and relentless homesickness. My roommate Emily was nice enough, but I missed my friends, my room, and my art supplies. On one particularly bad day, after getting chewed out by my history teacher for daydreaming, I texted Dad. "I hate it here. Please let me come home." His response came hours later. "You'll adjust. Get it time." I stared at my phone, fighting back tears. That's when I overheard some girls nearby gossiping. "Did you hear about the new girl? Her dad shipped her off so he could shack up with his girlfriend." "No way. That's so messed up." "Yeah, I heard the girlfriend's barely older than us." I felt my face burning with shame and anger. Is that what everyone thought? That I'd been tossed aside for Dad's midlife crisis? That night, lying in my narrow bed and listening to Emily's soft snores, I made a decision. If Dad and Veronica wanted me gone so badly, fine. I'd show them I didn't need them. I'd excel at this school, make my own way, and never rely on them again. Months flew by, and slowly, I started to find my footing at Oak Ridge. Don't get me wrong, I still miss home. But I was determined to make the best of it. One day in the cafeteria, a girl with bright blue hair plopped down next to me. "You have a new kid, right?" "I'm Mia," she said. I nodded, taking in her rebellious vibe. "Sarah, nice to meet you." "Don't let this place get you down," Mia said, gesturing around. "It's all a game. Once you figure out the rules, you can bend them." Mia introduced me to her friend, Tyler, a computer genius with a heart of gold. The three of us became inseparable, and suddenly, Oak Ridge didn't seem so bad. I threw myself into my studies, determined to prove I belonged there. My grades soared, especially in art class. Miss Rodriguez, my art teacher, took me under her wing. "Sarah, your work is exceptional," she said one day, examining my latest painting. "Have you considered entering the National Young Artist Competition?" I hesitated. "I don't know. It's pretty prestigious." "Exactly," Miss Rodriguez smiled. "And you have the talent to win it." Meanwhile, things at home were strange. Dad's calls became less frequent, and when we did talk, he seemed distracted. Veronica's voice was always in the background, a constant reminder of why I was at Oak Ridge. One afternoon, I was heading to Miss Rodriguez's class when I overheard two staff members talking. "It's the third month James Henderson has missed the tuition payment. If this continues, we'll have to discuss Sarah's enrollment status." My heart raced. Dad was having money problems. That didn't make sense. His real estate business had always been successful. I confided in Mia and Tyler. "Guys, something's not right. Can you help me dig into this?" I asked. Tyler cracked his knuckles. "Leave it to me. If there's dirt to be found, I'll find it." For weeks, we pored over public records and financial reports. Tyler's computer skills were a godsend, helping us navigate the complex world of business finances. "Sarah, look at this," Tyler said one night, pointing at his laptop screen. "These numbers don't add up. There are inconsistencies in your dad's business reports." Mia leaned in. "Yeah, and check out these purchases: designer clothes, fancy restaurants, spa treatments. Is your dad suddenly into self-care?" I felt sick. That has to be Veronica. She's bleeding him dry. Despite the drama unfolding at home, I channeled all my emotions into my art. Miss Rodriguez pushed me harder than ever, guiding me through every step as I prepared for the National Young Artists Competition. The night before the submission deadline, I put the finishing touches on my piece, a haunting portrait that captured both the pain of betrayal and the strength found in independence. Weeks later, Miss Rodriguez burst into the art room, waving an envelope. "Sarah, you did it. You won first place in the National Young Artists Competition." The room erupted in cheers as my classmates congratulated me. My phone buzzed with a news alert. I froze when I saw the headline: "Unknown Teen Prodigy Wins National Art Competition." Judges stunned. Spring break finally arrived, and I headed home with a mix of excitement and dread. As the cab pulled up to our house, I knew something was off. The lawn was overgrown, and Dad's car looked like it hadn't been washed in months. Inside the house was even worse. Takeout containers littered the kitchen, and a layer of dust covered everything. Dad emerged from his study looking haggard, older than I remembered. "Sarah, I didn't think you were coming home for break." I dropped my bag. "Surprise. What's going on here, Dad?" He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "It's nothing, just been busy with work." "How's school?" I wasn't buying it. "Cut the act, Dad. I know about the missed tuition payments. What's really going on?" His face fell. "It's just a temporary cash flow issue. I've got it under control." That's when Veronica sauntered in, dripping in jewelry and designer clothes. "Oh, Sarah, you're here. How nice." I couldn't hold back anymore. "Nice clothes, Veronica. Must have cost a fortune, especially considering Dad can't even pay my school fees." Dad's eyes widened. "Sarah, that's enough." But I wasn't done. I pulled out the documents Tyler had helped me compile. "No, Dad, it's not. Look at this. Your accounts are being drained, and it's not just because of business troubles." He waved his hand dismissively. "You don't understand business, Sarah. This is adult stuff." "Oh yeah? Then explain these transactions." I pointed to a series of large withdrawals. "Designer boutiques, spa retreats, jewelry stores. Unless you've developed some expensive new hobbies, I'm guessing this is all Veronica." Veronica's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "You little brat, you have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the banking app. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? You added yourself to Dad's accounts. You've been siphonning money for months." Dad's face drained of color. "Veronica, is this true?" She tried to backpedal, but the evidence was undeniable. As the truth unraveled, Dad seemed to age years before my eyes. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he whispered. "I've been such a fool." Just then, the doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood outside, along with Aunt Lisa. "James Henderson," one officer asked, "we need to ask you some questions about financial irregularities in your business." Dad looked shocked. "What? Who reported this?" Aunt Lisa stepped forward. "I did, James. When Sarah told me what was going on, I couldn't stand by and watch you destroy everything." As the officers began questioning Dad, Veronica made a break for it. She grabbed her purse and bolted for the door. But Aunt Lisa was quicker. She stuck out her foot, sending Veronica sprawling. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Veronica was arrested for fraud, and Dad faced serious legal consequences for financial mismanagement. As for me, I made the tough decision to move in with Aunt Lisa. 2 years later, I'm thriving at a top art school, my talent finally getting the recognition it deserves. As I stand in front of my latest exhibition, I reflect on how far I've come. That scared, betrayed girl from Oak Ridge feels like a lifetime ago. Now I'm stronger, wiser, and finally free from the toxic people who tried to hold me back. What would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes? Would you have forgiven your father for choosing his girlfriend over you and sending you away to boarding school? Or would you have cut ties completely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and perspectives could help others facing similar situations. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, resilience, and sweet justice, don't forget to hit that like button. For more compelling stories exploring complex family dynamics and personal growth, subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring these narratives to life. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Carter. I'm about to graduate from one of the top universities in the country with a degree in computer science. It's been a wild ride, and I'm really proud of how far I've come. But honestly, my family life, it's a mess. My parents split when I was a kid, and after that, my dad's side of the family pretty much disappeared from our lives, including my Uncle Robert. I've got these blurry memories of him visiting when I was little, like that one time he helped out when we were going through a tough patch. But it's all kind of hazy now. As graduation gets closer, I can't stop thinking about the past. I've worked my ass off for 4 years, and now I'm on the verge of something huge. But there's this nagging feeling that something's missing. Hey Jess, you okay? That's Mike, my boyfriend. He's been my rock through all this college craziness. Yeah, I'm good. Just thinking about family stuff. Your dad's side again, he asks. I nod, biting my lip. I was thinking about inviting Uncle Robert to graduation. Mike raises an eyebrow. The estranged uncle? Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't know. Maybe it's time to build some bridges. I pull out my phone and start scrolling through social media. After some digging, I finally find Uncle Robert's profile. My finger hovers over the message button. What's the worst that could happen? I mutter, then type out a quick invite. Life goes on while I wait for a reply. I'm juggling final exams, prepping for job interviews, and trying to keep it all together. It's a lot, but I've never been one to back down from a challenge. A few days later, my phone pings. It's Uncle Robert. He's accepted the invitation. Holy crap, I say out loud, staring at my screen. What's up? Mike asks, looking up from his textbook. Uncle Robert, he's coming to graduation. Mike puts his book down. Wow, how do you feel about that? I let out a shaky breath, nervous, excited. I don't know. It's weird, right? A little, but hey, if this is what you want, I've got your back. I smile, grateful for his support. Thanks, Mike. I just hope it doesn't blow up in my face. As graduation day gets closer, I throw myself into preparations, finalizing my resume, practicing interview questions, making sure my gown fits. But in the back of my mind, I'm constantly wondering what's going to happen when Uncle Robert shows up. I try to focus on the positives. I'm graduating, I've got job prospects, and I got Mike. Things are looking up. But the night before, I can't shake this feeling, like I'm standing on the edge of a diving board, unsure if there's water in the pool. It'll be fine, I whisper to myself in the dark. Everything's going to be fine. Little did I know, inviting Uncle Robert was about to turn everything upside down. The big day finally arrives. My hands are shaking as I adjust my cap one last time. I can hear the crowd buzzing on the other side of the curtain. You ready, Jess? My best friend Alicia asks, giving my arm a squeeze. As ready as I'll ever be, I reply, taking a deep breath. The ceremony flies by in a blur. Before I know it, I'm walking across the stage, shaking hands with the dean as he hands me my diploma. I scan the crowd and spot my mom, Lisa, her face beaming with pride. And then, a few rows back, there's Uncle Robert. He actually came. After the ceremony, I'm swept up in hugs and congratulations. My mom pulls me into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, sweetie, she says, her voice thick with emotion. Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. That's when I see Uncle Robert approaching. He looks older than I remember, his hair more gray than brown now. Jessica, congratulations. Thanks for coming, Uncle Robert. It means a lot. He nods and glances around. Can we talk privately for a moment? Curiosity gets the better of me, so I follow him to a quieter corner. That's when his expression changes. So about that loan I gave your mother 10 years ago. I blink, caught off guard. Loan? What loan? The $5,000 I lent her for your education. It's time to pay up. My jaw drops. I don't know anything about that. Are you sure? His face hardens. Of course I'm sure. Your mother promised to pay me back, and since it was for your education, I figure you should be the one to repay it. I'm speechless. This can't be happening. Not today of all days. Uncle Robert, I just graduated. I don't have that kind of money, I say, my voice trembling. His voice rises. Well, you better figure it out. I didn't come here for nothing, you know. I can feel eyes on us. And my face burns with embarrassment. Please, can we discuss this another time? This isn't the place, I plead, hoping to calm him down. No, we'll discuss it now, he interrupts, his voice growing louder. That's when my mom notices the commotion and rushes over. Robert, what's going on? She asks, her voice full of concern. Uncle Robert turns to her, his expression hard. Perfect timing, Lisa. Care to explain why your daughter hasn't paid back the money I lent you? Mom's face goes pale. Robert, not here. Not now. Why not? Seems like the perfect time to me. Families all together. Isn't that nice? He sneers. I look between them, feeling like I'm watching a tennis match. Can someone please tell me what's going on? I ask, my voice barely steady. Mom takes a deep breath. Honey, it's complicated. Your uncle did help us out years ago, but nothing. Uncle Robert cuts her off. I gave you that money in good faith, and you promised to pay it back. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Mike pushing his way through the crowd, concern written all over his face. Everything okay here? He asks. I'm about to respond when Uncle Robert scoffs. Oh, great, the boyfriend. Tell me, young man, did you know you're dating a freeloader? Excuse me? Mike's voice drops, dangerously low. This is spiraling out of control. I need to do something. Everyone, please, can we just take a breath? I say, my voice shaking. Uncle Robert, I had no idea about this loan. I'm sorry, but I can't pay you back right now. Maybe we can work something out later. But he's not having it. Later. I've waited 10 years. Your mother has been dodging me, and now you're trying to do the same. Mom steps between us, her eyes flashing with anger. That's enough, Robert. You want to talk about the past? Fine, let's talk about how you manipulated Dad into changing his will. Or how about the money you borrowed from Aunt Sarah and never paid back? The air feels electric. Years of unspoken tensions are bubbling to the surface, and I'm caught in the middle of it all. What should have been the happiest day of my life has turned into a nightmare. As I stand there, watching my family implode, I can't help but wonder what other secrets are lurking in our past. The graduation disaster left me reeling. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than just an unpaid loan. So I decided to dig deeper. Mom, we need to talk about Uncle Robert, I said one evening, sitting down at the kitchen table. She sighed, looking exhausted. I was hoping we could just forget about all that. I can't. Not until I know the truth. What really happened with that loan? I pressed. Mom hesitated, then pulled out a box of old documents. It's a long story, Jess. Are you sure you want to hear it? I'm sure, I replied. As we sifted through faded bank statements and old letters, a pattern started to emerge. Uncle Robert's name kept popping up, always tied to money problems. He didn't just lend us money, did he? I asked, my stomach sinking. Mom shook her head. No, he didn't. After your father left, Robert showed up acting like a savior. He offered to help with the bills, but there was always a catch. He guilt me into paying for his car repairs or covering his rent. It was never ending. I felt a surge of anger. Why didn't you tell me? I was embarrassed, Jess. I thought I could handle it on my own. The next day, I called my grandmother. Her voice trembled as she shared her own experiences. Robert, he's always been good at manipulating people. He convinced your grandfather to change his will, leaving everything to him. We didn't find out until it was too late. The pieces were falling into place, but I needed more answers. I reached out to Aunt Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Jessica, is that really you? She sounded surprised to hear from me. Hi, Aunt Sarah. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to ask you about Uncle Robert. There was a long pause. What do you want to know? Everything. For the next hour, Aunt Sarah poured out years of pent-up frustration and hurt. Robert had borrowed money from her too, promising to pay it back with interest. He never did. Instead, he spread rumors about her, turning the family against her. I'm so sorry, Aunt Sarah. I had no idea. It's not your fault, sweetie. Robert's always been good at covering his tracks. As I uncovered more of Robert's deceptions, my personal life started to suffer. Mike and I got into an argument when I canceled our date night to continue my investigation. Jess, I get that this is important, but you can't let this consume you, Mike said, his frustration clear. You don't understand, I snapped. This isn't just about me, it's about my whole family. I'm trying to understand, but you're shutting me out, he replied, his voice softening. I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop now. I was so close to unraveling the full truth. My job search wasn't going any better either. During one interview, I was so distracted thinking about a lead I'd uncovered on Robert's shady business dealings that I bombed it completely. I'm sorry, but I don't think you're a good fit for our company, the interviewer said, her voice tinged with disappointment. I walked out feeling defeated. Was I throwing away my future to expose the wrongs of the past? That night, I spread all the evidence I collected across my bedroom floor: bank statements, emails, handwritten notes. It all pointed to one undeniable conclusion. Uncle Robert hadn't just manipulated my mom and Aunt Sarah. He'd been exploiting the entire family for years. I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over Mike's number. I needed to talk to someone about all of this, but I hesitated. Would he understand, or would this drive an even bigger wedge between us? As I sat there, surrounded by the wreckage of my family's past, I realized I had a choice. I could keep digging, potentially at the cost of my relationships and future, or I could let it go and move on. But then I thought of Mom, Grandma, Aunt Sarah, all the people Robert had hurt. They deserved justice. And I was the only one in a position to make that happen. I took a deep breath and dialed Mike's number. It was time to let him in on everything. Whatever happened next, I knew I couldn't face it alone. Weeks of planning led to the day of the family reunion. My heart pounded as I watched everyone file into the rented hall, including Uncle Robert. Thanks for organizing this, Jess, Mom said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, trying to calm my nerves. It was time to clear the air. Once everyone was seated, I stood up. I know you're all wondering why I called this reunion. The truth is, we've been living with a lie for too long. I pulled out a projector and began presenting the evidence I'd gathered: bank statements, emails, recorded conversations, all pointing to Robert's years of manipulation and fraud. You little snake, Robert shouted, leaping to his feet. How dare you? But his protests were drowned out as other family members spoke up. He borrowed $10,000 from me and never paid it back, Cousin Tom revealed. Aunt Sarah chimed in. He spread rumors about me to cover up his own theft. As Robert's facade crumbled, the family united against him. The decision to cut ties with him was unanimous. Unexpectedly, my investigation caught the attention of a corporate security firm. Impressed by my tenacity and skills, they offered me a job in fraud detection. Months later, I was thriving in my new career. My family had grown closer, healing old wounds together. Then, the news broke. Robert was facing charges for tax evasion and fraud in his business dealings. Karma's a real kicker, huh? Mike said, showing me the article. I smiled, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Justice was served without us having to lift a finger. As I reflected on everything, I realized the importance of standing up to toxic people and the power of the truth. My future was bright, no longer overshadowed by Robert's manipulation. Ready for dinner with the family? Mike asked, grabbing his keys. I nodded, grateful for the stronger, more honest relationships we built. More than ready. Let's go. The story ends here. What would you have done in Jessica's shoes? Would you have exposed Uncle Robert or kept the family secrets buried? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more compelling stories. Hey there, I'm Sarah Thompson, 32 years old and part of Thompson's Tools, our family's hardware store. It's been around forever, practically the heart of our small Midwest town. I've worked here since I could reach the cash register, learning everything there is to know about running the place. I always figured it would be mine someday, you know. Sarah, can you check on that shipment of power tools? That's my dad, Robert. He's been teaching me the ropes since day one. On it, Dad, I reply, heading to the stockroom. As I count the boxes, a smile creeps onto my face. This store, it's more than just a place to work. It's our legacy. My little brother, Mike, though, that's a different story. While I'm here busting my butt, he's out chasing his latest big break. Just then Lisa, my best friend, pops in during her lunch break from the local paper. Hey Sarah, how's business? Same old, same old. How's the journalism world treating you? We chat for a bit until a familiar face walks in. David, my boyfriend and our most loyal customer. There's my favorite hardware expert, he grins, leaning against the counter. What can I do for you today, Mr. Contractor? I tease back. As we flirt, old Joe shuffles by, muttering something about young love. Joe's been here since I was in pigtails, practically family at this point. All right, lovebirds, some of us are trying to work here, Joe chuckles. The day moves along with the usual hustle and bustle. But as I'm closing up, I hear Ree's voices from the back office. It's Dad and Mike. You promised this was the last time, Mike. Dad's voice is tense. I know. I just need a little more time. I freeze with my hand on the doorknob. What has Mike gotten himself into now? And why does Dad sound so worried? That night, as I drive home, I can't shake the uneasy feeling. Mike's always been the wild card in the family, but this feels different, more serious. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But deep down, I know this is just the beginning of something big, something that could change everything. Dad had been acting strange for months, always whispering with Mike, brushing me off every time I asked about the store's finances. Dad, can we go over the quarterly reports? Not now, Sarah. I've got it under control. But I knew he didn't. I could feel it. Then came the day that changed everything. I pulled up to the store, coffee in hand, ready for another day. But the lights were off, the doors locked. And there, in the window, was a sign that made my heart drop. Under new management. My hands shook as I dialed Dad's number. What's going on? Why is the store closed? Meet me at the house, Sarah. We need to talk. When I got there, Dad looked defeated. Mike was sitting there too, with a smirk on his face. I sold the store, Dad said, avoiding my eyes. To who? To me, Mike chimed in, grinning like the cat that swallowed the canary. For how much? I demanded, my voice shaking. Dad mumbled something under his breath. What was that? I asked, barely keeping it together. $1, he finally said. The room spun. $1. Are you kidding me? Mike needs a fresh start, Sarah. You're already successful. You don't need the store. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I poured my life into that store. How could they do this? Tough break, sis, Mike shrugged. But hey, maybe you can come work for me now. I stormed out, tears blurring my vision. I ended up at Lisa's place, sobbing on her couch. He sold it to Mike for $1. I hiccuped. Lisa was in shock. I don't get it. Why would he do this? I whispered. Lisa's journalist instincts kicked in. Something's not adding up. Give me a few days. I'll dig around. The next day, I met David for lunch. He was furious when I told him what had happened. This isn't right, Sarah. There's got to be more to the story. I know, but what can I do? It's done, I said, feeling defeated. A few days later, Lisa called me, her voice urgent. Sarah, you need to hear this. I've been asking around. Mike's in deep with some gambling debts, dangerous people kind of debts. Suddenly, everything clicked. Dad hadn't sold the store to help Mike start fresh. He'd done it to bail him out. Looks that way, Lisa continued. He probably thought he was protecting him. Mike, I felt sick. Our family legacy traded away to cover Mike's mistakes. I couldn't let this stand. Determined, I marched down to the store, ready to confront Mike. There he was, lounging at my old desk with his feet up like he owned the place. Well, technically, he did. Well, he sneered, come to beg for your job back. You're unbelievable, I snapped. How could you take advantage of Dad like this? Mike leaned forward, a smug grin plastered on his face. Look, sis, I'm in charge now. You're not welcome here anymore, so why don't you just run along? I was about to fire back when my phone rang. It was Joe, his voice shaky. Sarah, it's Joe. I've been fired. Mike's letting all the long-timers go. Says we're too expensive. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. This wasn't just about me anymore. Mike was tearing apart everything we had built. As I stormed out of the store, I made a promise to myself. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Mike might think he'd won, but he had no idea what was coming. I was going to fight for Thompson's tools. For Joe, for everything our family had worked so hard to create. And I wasn't going to rest until justice was served. Lisa and I began digging, gathering any information we could. We documented everything, every misstep, every shady deal. Look at this, Lisa said one night, spreading papers across the table. Mike's behind on payments to almost every supplier. And check out these customer complaints, I added, scrolling through my phone. The quality has gone downhill fast. Watching the store I loved crumble from the inside out was unbearable. But I had to stay focused. David was a huge help too, spreading the word in his circles. I told the guys at the site about Mike's unreliability. David said, "Word's getting around fast." Joe, now on the outside, had become our inside man, keeping us updated on Mike's day-to-day screw-ups. "He's clueless, Sarah. Can't even work the register right," Joe reported one night. Then, out of the blue, Dad called. "Sarah, can we talk?" I made a mistake. We met at a diner. Dad looked rough, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I thought I was helping Mike, but maybe we can work together to fix this." I stared at him, disbelief bubbling up inside. "Fix this? You sold our family legacy for $1, Dad. $1? It's too late for sorry." I stormed out, fury and hurt waging war inside me. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. Later that night, Joe called again, panic in his voice. "Sarah, you've got to get down here. Mike's selling off inventory for pennies on the dollar. Your dad's helping him." My heart raced as I sped to the store. When I arrived, there they were, Dad and Mike, loading up a truck with our best stock. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. Mike spun around, caught red-handed. "Mind your own business, Sarah." "This is my business. You're destroying everything we built." Dad stepped in, pleading. "Sarah, please, Mike needs the money. We're just trying to." "To what?" "Ruin everything." "Congratulations. You've succeeded." Years of pent-up resentment and betrayal came pouring out. We yelled, we cried, we accused. It was ugly, but it was necessary. As I left that night, I knew things would never be the same. But I also knew what I had to do next. The following morning, I met with Lisa. "It's time," I said firmly. "Let's go public." We gathered our evidence and took it to the local business association, exposing Mike's mismanagement and Dad's unethical practices. The town erupted in outrage. "I can't believe it," exclaimed Mrs. Johnson, one of our longtime customers. "I won't be shopping there anymore." That's when things really spiraled out of control. One of Mike's gambling buddies, tired of waiting for payment, went to the cops. Suddenly, there was a full-blown investigation into Mike's finances and the suspicious sale of the store. Mike panicked and tried to sell the store, but nobody would touch it. The bank froze his accounts, leaving him trapped. Amid all this chaos, Dad suffered a heart attack. It wasn't major, but it was a wake-up call. When I visited him in the hospital, he looked frail. "Sarah," he said, his voice weak, "I'm so sorry for everything. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I was wrong." I wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but I listened. It was a start. Then came the bombshell. Our lawyer, Mr. Peters, called me. "Sarah, Mike's activities have voided the original sale. Legally, the store is yours." I could hardly believe it. The next day, I went to the store, and there was old Joe, grinning from ear to ear. "Boss," he said, handing me the keys. "Welcome home." The following months were a whirlwind. I rehired Joe and the others, working day and night to rebuild our reputation. Slowly but surely, customers started to return. Mike, on the other hand, was facing jail time for fraud and unpaid debts. Dad moved away to live with my aunt, giving me the space I needed to find my footing. Standing behind the counter of Thompson's Tools, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. David walked in, kissing me gently. "How's my favorite hardware store owner?" he asked with a smile. Lisa popped in next, ready for our lunch date. Old Joe shuffled by, muttering something about young folks and their lunch breaks. I looked around at my little family, not bound by blood, but by choice. We'd been through hell, but we'd come out stronger. The store wasn't just a business anymore. It was a symbol of what we could overcome together. As I flipped the open sign, I knew one thing for sure. Whoever came next, we were ready for it. And that's the end of my story, folks. Now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven your father and brother or cut them out of your life completely? What do you think is the right balance between family loyalty and self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinions matter, and I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama and lessons learned the hard way. Thanks for listening. Hey there, I'm Olivia Thompson. I'm 38, thriving in the real estate business and married to James, the love of my life. He's a widower with 2 incredible kids, Emma and Ethan, who are 14 and 12. Let me tell you, being a stepmom is no easy feat, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. We've built a cozy life in suburban Chicago. James is a top surgeon at the local hospital, and I'm closing deals left and right. Life is good, but then there's Mark, James' brother. Mark, oh boy, where do I begin? He's married to Sarah, and they have 2 kids, Tyler and Mia. Mark is always cooking up some new business idea, but none of them ever seem to work out. I can sense the jealousy in his eyes whenever he's around James. Last Thanksgiving, we had the whole family over at our place. I was in the kitchen, busy making my famous apple pie, when I overheard Mark talking to James. "So how's playing house with the real estate agent?" he sneered. I froze, my hand halfway to the cinnamon. James laughed it off. "Come on, Mark. Olivia's amazing with the kids. We're happy." "Sure, but she's not their real mom, is she?" "How could she be?" It felt like a punch to the gut, but I took a deep breath, pasted on a smile, and brought the pie out as if nothing had happened. Later, while I was helping Emma with her math homework, Mark swaggered over. "Hey, step on Olivia, trying to win them over with homework help." I stared him down. Family isn't about blood, Mark. It's about love. Emma squeezed my hand under the table, and I knew I had her support. But it's not all drama. James and I share quiet moments too. One night, after the kids were in bed, he sat me down. "Liv, I need to tell you something," he said. "The doctor found a little issue with my heart." My own heart nearly stopped. "Is it serious?" "It's manageable with meds, but it made me think. I should update my will, just to make sure you and the kids are taken care of." I wanted to argue, to say he'd be fine, but I knew he was right, so I nodded, holding back tears. "We'll face whatever comes together," I told him. That night, as I lay in bed, I worried about James, the kids, and even Mark's attitude. But then I heard Ethan laughing down the hall as James told him a bedtime story and Emma's music softly playing from her room. I realized no matter what life threw at us, we were a family, and that's all that mattered. Then came the day that turned everything upside down. It was just another Tuesday morning. I was pouring my second cup of coffee when the phone rang. My world shifted as I heard the news. James had collapsed at work. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. Just like that, my rock, my partner, the love of my life gone. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of tears and casseroles. Emma and Ethan clung to me and I to them, all of us lost in our grief, trying to figure out how to move forward. Then came the reading of the will. I sat there, numb, barely processing the lawyer's words until Mark's voice cut through the fog. "What do you mean she gets an equal share? She's not even family." I blinked, focusing on his angry, red face. "James wanted to take care of all 3 of us," I said quietly. "This is ridiculous. You manipulated him. Those aren't even your real kids." The lawyer tried to step in, but Mark wasn't done. "You're nothing but a gold digger. You didn't love James. You just wanted his money." I felt Emma trembling beside me, and I finally found my voice. "That's enough, Mark. This is what James wanted. End of discussion." But it wasn't the end. Over the following weeks, I started getting cold looks from family members, and the whispers stopped when I entered a room. Finally, at a family dinner, James's cousin Linda pulled me aside. "Olivia, I think you should know, Mark's been saying some things." My stomach dropped as Linda explained. According to Mark, I had seduced James for his money, never cared about the kids, and was probably cheating on him before he died. The words made me feel physically sick. The worst was yet to come. Emma had a big choir performance at school, and I was helping her with her hair when my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Uncle Mark is here. He looks mad." Alarmed, I rushed downstairs to find Mark standing in the living room, reeking of alcohol. "There she is, the little homewrecker," he slurred. "Mark, you're drunk. Go home," I said, trying to stay calm. "Not until you admit what you did. You stole my brother's money," he shouted. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, wide-eyed. "Mom, what's going on?" Mark turned on her, his voice harsh. "She's not your mom. Your real mom is dead, and this woman is trying to steal your inheritance. Emma burst into tears and ran back to her room. I saw red. Get out of my house now, I demanded. Or what? You'll call the cops? Go ahead. I'll tell them how you manipulated my brother, he taunted. Just then, Ethan emerged from the kitchen, holding the phone. I already called them, Uncle Mark. They're on their way. Mark's face paled. He stumbled toward the door, throwing one last insult over his shoulder. This isn't over, Olivia. As the door slammed, I sank onto the stairs, my head in my hands. Ethan sat beside me, worry etched across his young face. Mom, are you okay? I looked at him and then at Emma, her tear-streaked face peeking down from the stairs. In that moment, I knew these were my kids, and I would move heaven and earth to protect them. I'm okay, sweetie, and we're going to be okay. I promise. As I held my children that night, I realized Mark was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It was time to fight back. A few days later, I sat across from Mike, the private investigator. My stomach churned as he slid a folder across the table. You were right to be suspicious, Mrs. Thompson. Your brother-in-law's been busy, he said. I opened the folder, my eyes widening as I skimmed the contents. Embezzlement, gambling debts, loans in James's name. Mike nodded grimly. Mark's in deep. He's desperate for that inheritance to cover his tracks. I felt sick. Thank you, Mike. This changes everything. Later that day, I met with my lawyer, Sandra. Can Mark contest the will? I asked. Sandra shook her head. Not successfully. James was of sound mind, and his wishes are clear. But be prepared, Mark will probably try anyway. As I drove home, my thoughts raced. I had the upper hand now, but at what cost to my family? When I walked into the house, I found Emma and Ethan sitting on the couch, looking anxious. Hey kids, everything okay? I asked. Emma bit her lip. Mom, Uncle Mark called us. My heart sank. What did he say? Ethan spoke up. He said you were lying about Dad's will, that you're trying to steal our inheritance. I sat down heavily, overwhelmed. Oh, kids. Emma reached for my hand. We didn't believe him, Mom. We know you'd never do that. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you for telling me, and thank you for trusting me. We hugged, and in that moment, I realized how far we had come. These kids, who I had feared might never accept me, now trusted me completely. The next day, I took them to their first therapy session with Dr. Rodriguez. How are you feeling about everything? She asked gently. Emma shrugged, sad, angry. I miss Dad, but I'm glad we have Mom. Ethan nodded. Yeah, Uncle Mark's being a jerk, but Mom's always there for us. I squeezed their hands, my heart full. Over the next few weeks, we focused on healing. Game nights, movie marathons, and long talks over hot chocolate slowly brought laughter back into our home. Then one evening, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mark standing there, looking haggard. We need to talk, Olivia, he muttered. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. I know everything, Mark. The embezzlement, the loans in James's name. It's over. His face drained of color. How? You can't prove anything. I have enough proof to send you to prison, I said firmly. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You'll ruin everything. Suddenly, the door flew open. Emma and Ethan stood there, phones in hand. Let go of our mom, Ethan said, his voice trembling but determined. Emma held up her phone. We recorded everything. Touch her again, and we'll call the cops. Mark released me, stumbling backward. You're choosing her over family? She is our family, Emma said, her voice steady. As Mark slunk away, I turned to my children, overwhelmed with pride and love. You didn't have to do that, I said softly. Ethan shrugged. Yeah, we did. You're our mom. We protect each other. Emma nodded. That's what family does. I pulled them into a hug, marveling at how, in the midst of pain and betrayal, we had forged something unbreakable. That night, as I lay in bed, I knew the battle wasn't over. Mark wouldn't give up easily. For the first time since James died, I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, we'd face it together as a family. The annual Thompson family barbecue, once a joyous occasion, was now a minefield of tension. Standing in Aunt Martha's backyard, I clutched a folder, feeling its weight like a shield. It was time to end this. I approached Mark, my heart racing. We need to talk. Privately, I said, nodding toward the garage. Inside, I laid out the evidence, watching Mark's face cycle from red to white to green. You have two choices: back off and get help, or I go public. His eyes darted around like a cornered animal. You wouldn't dare, he growled. Try me. Mark snapped. He lunged, his fist connecting with my jaw. Pain shot through me as I stumbled, tasting blood. Dad, Tyler's voice rang out. His son stood in the doorway, horror on his face. Within seconds, the garage was full. Sarah, Emma, Ethan, Aunt Martha, all witnessing Mark's true nature unravel. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. That's it, Mark. We're done. The police arrived soon after, leading Mark away in handcuffs. The shock on everyone's faces told me the truth was finally out, and there was no going back. Months passed, and Mark's trial became a media circus. Embezzlement, fraud, assault. In the end, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Through it all, Emma, Ethan, and I clung to one another. We cried, we laughed, we healed. One evening over dinner, Emma cleared her throat, her voice tentative. Mom, we've been thinking. Ethan jumped in. We want you to adopt us. Legally. I nearly choked on my pasta. Are you sure? They both nodded, eyes shining. Dad would want this, Emma said softly. I pulled them into a tearful embrace, laughing and crying at the same time. In that moment, I felt James's presence, loving, approving. In honor of James, we used part of the inheritance to start the James Thompson Foundation for Blended Families, a way to help others navigate the same choppy waters we had survived. Tyler and Mia were frequent visitors too. They had lost their father to his own demons, but they gained a support system in us. Today, we stood at James's grave. The air was crisp, leaves crunching under our feet. Emma laid flowers on the headstone. Hey, Dad, we miss you, she whispered. Ethan grinned. Remember when he tried to teach us to fish and fell into the lake? We laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet cemetery. As we walked back to the car, I marveled at my children, strong, compassionate, and resilient. They had faced loss and betrayal, but had come out shining. Ice cream, I suggested. Race you to the car. Ethan bolted, Emma close behind. As I slid into the driver's seat, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back was stronger, wiser, and more complete than she had ever been. Thanks, James, I whispered. I'll take good care of our family. As we drove away, the car filled with laughter, I knew that whatever life threw at us, we'd face it together, bound not by blood, but by love. Stronger than any legal document or DNA test could ever prove. The road ahead was open, full of possibility, and for the first time in a long while, I couldn't wait to see where it would lead us. As for your question, if I were in Olivia's shoes, I'd have given Mark a chance, but with firm boundaries. Everyone deserves the opportunity to change, but some actions, like betrayal and violence, are hard to forgive. Sometimes protecting your family means cutting toxic ties. What about you? Would you have given him a chance? Hey there, I'm Linda, a 28-year-old mechanical engineer with a passion for innovation and a knack for getting myself into sticky situations. So there I was, standing in front of Tech & No's gleaming headquarters, clutching my offer letter like it was made of gold. This was it, my dream company, and I finally made it. Little did I know I was stepping into a nightmare. You must be Isolda, a booming voice echoed behind me. I turned around to see Victor, my new boss, towering at 6 feet, radiating authority. Welcome aboard. I expect great things from you. I beamed. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. The first few weeks were a dream. I was nailing my projects, impressing Victor at every turn. Nice work on the prototype, Isolda, he said one day, actually smiling for once. Keep this up and you'll go far. I practically floated home to my apartment, where my best friend and roommate Zoe was waiting. Someone looks happy, Zoe grinned, still loving the dream job. It's everything I hoped for and more. I gushed. But then things started to change. Victor's praise turned to criticism, and his rare smiles disappeared. This design is subpar, Linda, he snapped one day, tossing my blueprints aside. I expected better from you. I worked harder, stayed later, desperate to regain his approval. My coworker, Alex, noticed the toll it was taking on me. You okay? He asked one late night when I was still at my desk. You've been here till midnight all week. I forced a smile. just trying to stay on top of things. Then there was Jasmine, always lurking, always competing. "Oh, Linda," she would say, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "Victor rejected your design again? What a shame." I tried talking to Greg in HR about the pressure, but he just shrugged it off. "Victor's a perfectionist," he said. "That's why we're the best. You'll adjust." The only bright spot was Ethan from it. He'd stop by my desk with a sympathetic ear and cryptic warnings. "Be careful around Victor," he'd whisper. "He's not always what he seems." I brushed off his concerns, focusing on proving myself, until the day it all came crashing down. I was working on a crucial project, running on 3 hours of sleep and way too much coffee, when I made a mistake, a small calculation error. But in engineering, even small errors can be catastrophic. As I stared at my screen, my heart sank. Victor was going to kill me. I had no idea this mistake was about to set off a chain of events that would turn my dream job into a living nightmare. But hey, they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I was about to find out just how strong I could be. I stood in Victor's office, my heart pounding as I explained the error. His face turned an alarming shade of red. "Incompetent," he roared, slamming his fist on the desk. "Do you realize what this could have cost us?" "I'm sorry, sir," I stammered. "It won't happen again." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I'll make sure of that." He rummaged through his drawer, pulling out a dunce cap. My stomach dropped. "Put this on," he sneered. "Maybe it'll help you remember basic math." Humiliated, I placed the cap on my head as he marched me out to the engineering floor. "Attention, everyone," Victor bellowed. "This is what happens when you make stupid mistakes." Snickers erupted around me. Jasmine, of course, whipped out her phone. "Smile, Linda," she laughed, snapping photos. "This is too good." Even Alex, usually so kind, looked uncomfortable but didn't say a word. I stood there, fighting back tears as my coworkers mocked me. Memories of Victor's snide remarks, impossible deadlines, and public humiliations came flooding back. After what felt like an eternity, Victor dismissed me. I fled to the bathroom, my hands shaking as I called Zoe. "He did what?" Zoe's voice crackled through the phone. "Linda, that's workplace harassment." "I can't go back out there," I sobbed, recounting the humiliation. "You have to report him," Zoe urged. "This isn't okay." Summoning what little courage I had left, I went to HR. Greg listened to my story with a bored expression. "Victor's methods are unconventional," he shrugged. But Greg's response was dismissive. "Effective? Maybe. Just try not to make mistakes." Defeated, I returned to my desk, but things only got worse. Victor begins scrutinizing my every move, sabotaging my projects. "Redraw these blueprints," he demanded just hours before a deadline. "They're not up to par." Jasmine, of course, reveled in my downfall, constantly reminding me of the dunce cap incident. "Hey, Linda," she'd whisper, showing me the humiliating photos on her phone. "Wouldn't it be a shame if these leaked?" Even Alex's apology felt hollow. "I'm sorry," I laughed, he said, avoiding eye contact. I didn't want to be next." I understood, but it still stung. Weeks passed, and I was at my breaking point. One night, alone in the office, I started packing up my desk. Maybe it was time to quit. As I reached for a photo frame, I knocked over a stack of files. Victor's files. Papers scattered everywhere, and as I gathered them, something caught my eye. Financial reports that didn't add up and emails about creative accounting. My engineer's mind kicked into gear. This wasn't just bullying. This was fraud. I thought about quitting, walking away from this toxic mess. But then I thought about the next person Victor would torment, about Jasmine's smug face and Greg's casual dismissal of my pain. No, I wasn't going to let them win. I carefully replaced the files, my mind racing. I had no proof yet, but I would get it. Victor thought he could break me. He was about to learn this dunce was smarter than he ever imagined. That night, I left the office with a new determination. The old Isolda might have run away, but this new Isolda, she was ready for war. From that moment on, I became a secret agent in my own office. Every snide comment, every impossible deadline, every act of sabotage. I documented it all. My notebook became my weapon, and Ethan from it, he turned out to be a gold mine of information. "Victor's been doing this for years," Ethan whispered during a staged computer repair. I've seen at least 5 engineers quit because of him. We dug deeper, uncovering a trail of broken careers and stolen ideas. Over coffee, a former employee told me he took credit for my friend's patent. She couldn't prove it, so she left. I realized I wasn't alone. Other current and former engineers started reaching out, sharing their stories. Together, we formed a secret alliance determined to bring Victor down. The real smoking gun came when I stumbled upon undeniable evidence of fraud. Doctored financial reports, stolen patents, overcharged clients. It was a web of deceit that made my head spin. We need hard proof, I told my allies. Something he can't wiggle out of. That's when I hatched my plan. A fake, innovative design, too brilliant for Victor to resist. I worked nights and weekends, creating a revolutionary, completely bogus energy-saving device. When it was ready, I accidentally left the plans where Victor could find them. He took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. "Linda," he purred, cornering me by the water cooler. "I'm impressed by your latest design. I think we should discuss how to present it to the board." I played dumb. Present it? But it's not ready. "Oh, I think it is," he smirked. "In fact, I've already started the patent process, under my name, of course. For the good of the company." Bingo, I had him. As we prepared our case for the board, Victor must have sensed something was off. One evening, he cornered me in the parking lot, his tone menacing. "I hope you remember who gave you this opportunity, Linda," he growled. "It'd be a shame if your career ended before it really began." I stood my ground, heart pounding. "Is that a threat, sir?" He smiled coldly. "Just a friendly reminder of how things work around here." The next day, Jasmine approached me, her usual smugness replaced by nervousness. "Look, Isolde," she said, glancing around. "I know you're up to something. Maybe we can help each other out." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "I've got dirt on Victor too," she whispered. "If you cut me in on whatever you're planning, I'll share it." I considered her offer for a moment. "Thanks, Jasmine. I'll think about it." As she walked away, I smiled to myself. The tables had truly turned. That night, I met with my allies one last time. We reviewed our evidence, practiced our presentations, and steeled ourselves for the confrontation to come. "Are you ready for this?" Eakin asked, concern in his eyes. I took a deep breath, thinking of all the humiliation, the stolen ideas, the careers Victor had derailed. "More than ready," I said firmly. "It's time Victor learned that karma's a real, well, you know." As we left the cafe, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. Tomorrow we'd face the board and Victor. One way or another, things at Tekken No were about to change forever. The boardroom was tense as I laid out our evidence. Spreadsheets, emails, testimonies, a mountain of proof detailing Victor's abuse and fraud. As you can see, I concluded, Victor has been systematically bullying employees and stealing their work for years. The board members exchanged shocked glances. Victor, red-faced, leaped to his feet. "This is absurd. Linda is clearly trying to cover for her own incompetence." That's when my allies stepped up. One by one, current and former engineers shared their stories. "Victor stole my patent for the cooling system," one said. "He threatened to ruin my career if I didn't falsify test results," added another. With each testimony, in his desperation, Victor revealed even more of his misconduct. "So what if I push them hard?" he snapped. "That's how you get results in this industry." The board chairman raised his hand, silencing the room. "Victor, in light of these allegations, you're suspended pending a full investigation." As security escorted Victor out, defeated, Jasmine tried to quietly slip away. But I was ready for her. "Oh, there's more," I said, pulling out the evidence she had given me. Jasmine here was Victor's accomplice in several of these schemes. Jasmine's face went pale. I was just following orders. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The company underwent major restructuring. Greg from HR, who had ignored countless complaints, was fired. And me? I found myself with a promotion and a new role. "Linda, we'd like you to lead a committee on engineering ethics," the new CEO told me. "Your integrity is exactly what this company needs right now." Victor's downfall was swift and brutal. His professional reputation lay in ruins, job offers rescinded, industry connections severed. 6 months later, as I settled into my new office, Ethan burst in, waving a newspaper. "You're not going to believe this," he grinned. Victor's facing charges for patent theft from his previous job. Looks like karma finally caught up with him. I couldn't help but smile. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But the real validation came a few weeks later. I stood on stage accepting an industry award for ethical leadership in engineering. This award isn't just for me, I said into the microphone. It's for every engineer who's ever been bullied, belittled, or had their work stolen. Our ideas can change the world, but only if we have the courage to stand up for what's right. As applause washed over me, I thought about how far I'd come, from wearing a dunce cap to leading an ethics committee, from nearly quitting to winning awards. I spotted Zoe in the audience, cheering loudly. Alex was there too, along with many of the engineers who had stood with me against Victor. Even Jasmine was in attendance, looking chastened but somehow proud. As I stepped off the stage, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Techno executive pleads guilty to multiple charges of fraud and patent theft. I smiled to myself. Victor had thought he could break me, use me, and discard me like so many others. Instead, he'd unleash a force he never saw coming. Walking out into the bright sunlight, award in hand, I felt a sense of peace. The nightmare was over, but more importantly, I had made sure it would never happen to anyone else again. Sometimes, standing up for what's right isn't just about personal vindication. It's about changing the system, one unethical boss at a time. And that's the end of Isolda's journey, from humiliated engineer to industry leader. Now here's a question for you. Was Linda justified in setting a trap for Victor with the fake design, or did she cross an ethical line herself? Is it ever okay to fight deception with deception in the workplace? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 25 and working at the Paws and Claws Animal Shelter while hustling to become a full-fledged vet. It's not glamorous, but every day I get to help animals in need, and that's what matters to me. This morning, I woke up to the familiar sound of Whiskers, my tabby cat, purring on my chest. She's been with me since I was a kid, my constant companion through thick and thin. Morning, Furball, I said, scratching behind her ears. Ready for breakfast? As I poured her food, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah, my best friend since high school. Hey girl, we still on for coffee later? You bet. I replied, I need to vent about family drama. Again. At the shelter, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling about my brother Jake's latest business idea. He's always chasing these get-rich-quick schemes, and my parents just eat it up. It's like they've got blinders on when it comes to him. Later, at the coffee shop with Sarah, I finally let it all out. I swear, Sarah, if Jake asks me for money one more time, I'm going to lose it. Sarah rolled her eyes. Girl, you need to stand your ground. What about your dream of opening your own clinic? I know, but it's hard when my parents are constantly on his side. It's like I'm invisible unless they need something from me. Just then, my phone rang. Speak of the devil, it was Jake. Hey sis, got a minute? I sighed, mouthing it's him to Sarah. What's up, Jake? So I've got this amazing opportunity, he started, his voice dripping with fake enthusiasm. But I need a little capital to get it off the ground. Think you could spot me alone? I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache coming on. Jake, we've been through this. Remember the food truck fiasco, or the revolutionary juicer? This is different, I swear. It's a sure thing this time. Sorry, but no, I'm saving up for my own goals, you understand, right? The line went quiet for a moment. Yeah, whatever. I'll figure it out myself, he muttered before hanging up without saying goodbye. Sarah gave me a sympathetic look. You did the right thing, Mia. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. That evening, I trudged up to the house, exhausted from a long day at the shelter. Whiskers, I'm home. I called out, expecting her to greet me at the door like always. But the house was eerily quiet. Whiskers, here, kitty. I searched every room, my heart racing. That's when I noticed my parents acting strange. Mom, Dad, have you seen Whiskers? They exchanged a glance that made my stomach drop. Oh, honey, my mom started, not meeting my eyes. I'm sure she's around here somewhere. Dad jumped in, a little too quickly, probably just out exploring. You know how cats are. But Whiskers was an indoor cat, she never went outside. Something was very, very wrong. What aren't you telling me? I demanded, my voice shaking. They fumbled for words, making excuses about being late for some event as they rushed out. I stood there, a horrible realization dawning on me. Whatever happened to Whiskers, my family knew about it, and judging by their behavior, it wasn't good. The next morning, I hit the streets like a woman possessed. "Have you seen this cat?" I must have asked 100 people, shoving Whisker's photo in their faces, but no one had seen her. I plastered posters all over town, my hands shaking as I stapled them to telephone poles. "Please somebody, anybody," I muttered, fighting back tears. After a fruitless day, I dragged myself home, praying that Whiskers had somehow magically reappeared. Instead, I walked into a shouting match. We had no choice. That was Dad's voice coming from the kitchen. "No choice? You sold her cat," Jake yelled back. I froze, my blood turning to ice. "Sold? They sold Whiskers?" Mom's voice was pleading now. It was a necessary sacrifice. "Think of the money, Jake. Think of Mia's future." I burst into the kitchen, seeing red. What the hell is going on? Where's Whiskers? The guilty looks on their faces said it all. For once, Jake looked ashamed. "Mia, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you sold my cat." I was shaking with rage. "Honey, it's not what you think," Mom started. "Really? Because it sounds like you sold my best friend for cash." Jake stepped forward. "Look, I messed up, okay? I owed some guy money, and this lab was offering big bucks for test subjects. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Test subjects. You sold Whiskers to a lab for experiments." "Mia, sweetie," Dad chimed in, "the money is going into your inheritance fund. It's for your future." "My future? You think I care about money when you sent my cat to be tortured?" "It's not torture, it's science," Jake said, as if that made it better. I lost it. "Science? It's animal cruelty. How could you do this?" Mom tried to hug me, but I shoved her away. "Don't touch me. You're all monsters." I ran to my room, threw some clothes in a bag, and called Sarah. "Can I crash at your place? I can't stay here another minute." An hour later, I was on Sarah's couch, sobbing into a pint of ice cream. "They sold him, Sarah. They sold Whiskers to a lab for money." Sarah hugged me tight. "That's messed up, Mia. What are you going to do?" I sat up, wiping my eyes. "I'm going to find that lab, and I'm going to get Whiskers back." The next few days were a blur of research. I dug up everything I could on animal testing labs in the area. One name kept popping up, Biogenics Research Facility. I was scoping the place out when this guy approached me, tall, scruffy, and looking like he hadn't slept in days. "You looking to expose these guys too?" he asked. I eyed him suspiciously. "Who's asking?" He stuck out his hand. "Alex, investigative journalist. I've been tracking Biogenics for months. Something shady is going on in there." I shook his hand. "I'm Mia. They have my cat. I need to get him back." Alex's eyes widened. "Your cat? Damn, that's low, even for them. Listen, I think we can help each other out. I got some leads, but I need someone on the inside. You in?" I looked at the towering Biogenics building, thinking of Whiskers, scared and alone inside. "I'm in. Whatever it takes." Alex and I hit the ground running, like some twisted version of Batman and Robin. If Batman was a sleep-deprived journalist and Robin was a pissed-off vet assistant. One night, Alex was hunched over his laptop. "Your brother's into some seriously shady stuff, Mia. I've been digging, and it's not just the cat thing. He's neck-deep in insider trading, tax evasion, you name it, he's probably done it." I felt sick. God, I knew he was a screw-up. But this is next level. "We can use this," Alex mused. "Leverage against the lab. But first, we need eyes inside." That's how I found myself mopping floors at Biogenics, wearing an itchy janitor's uniform and trying not to gag at the smell. "Just act natural," I kept telling myself, snapping discreet photos with a hidden camera whenever I could. One night, I hit the jackpot. I overheard two scientists talking. "The latest batch isn't responding well to the treatment. Up the dosage, we need results before the FDA inspection." "But the side effects, not our problem. Just do it." I felt my blood boil. These people didn't care about the animals at all. Then I saw him, Whiskers in a cage, looking so small and scared. I wanted to grab him and run, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I had to play the long game. "I'm so sorry, buddy," I whispered. "I'll get you out of here, I promise." Weeks passed. Alex and I built our case, piece by damning piece. Photos, recordings, financial records. We had it all. This is it, Mia, Alex said, holding up a flash drive. Everything we need to bring these bastards down. We sent anonymous tips to every news outlet and law enforcement agency we could think of. Then we waited. While we waited for the hammer to fall on biogenics, I decided it was time for a family chat. I stormed into my parents' house and slapped a folder of evidence on the kitchen table. You want to know what your precious Jake's really been up to? I snarled. Tax fraud, insider trading, selling animals for illegal experiments. He's going down, and he might drag you down with him. Mom's face went pale. Dad stuttered. Now, Mia, I'm sure there's an explanation. An explanation? Are you kidding me? He sold my cat. He's been breaking the law left and right, and you're still defending him. He's family, Mom said weakly. I laughed bitterly. Family? You want to talk about family? I'm your daughter too, remember? As I stormed out, I heard Mom start to cry. Part of me wanted to turn back to comfort her, but a bigger part knew this was long overdue. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. Back at Sarah's, I paced nervously. What if it's not enough, Alex? What if they get away with it? Alex put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. They won't. Trust me, Mia, the truth always comes out. I nodded, trying to believe him. As the sun set, I stared out the window, thinking of Whiskers and all the other animals still trapped in that lab. Hang in there, guys, I whispered. Justice is coming. The day of the raid, I was a bundle of nerves. Alex and I watched from across the street as cop cars and animal control vans swarmed biogenics. It was chaos. Miss, you can't go in there, an officer shouted as I rushed toward the building. My cat's in there. I yelled back, ducking under the police tape. Inside it was pandemonium. Scientists were being cuffed. Animals were howling. And in the middle of it all, I heard a familiar meow. Whiskers. I cried, spotting him in his cage. I scooped him up, holding him close. I've got you, buddy. You're safe now. As I helped rescue other animals, I saw Jake being led out in handcuffs. Mia, he called out. Tell them this is a mistake. I stared at him coldly. The only mistake was trusting you, Jake. The fallout was brutal. Jake's arrest was all over the news, along with his laundry list of crimes. My parents' phones rang off the hook with reporters and angry business associates. I overheard Mom on the phone one day. No, please, we had no idea. Of course, we're still good for the investment. Hello, the family business tanked. Former friends crossed the street to avoid my parents. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Meanwhile, I had my hands full. The settlement from biogenics was substantial, and I knew exactly what to do with it. Mia's Miracle Animal Sanctuary. Sarah read the sign as we stood in front of the sprawling property. It's perfect, Mia. I grinned, watching the rescued animals roam freely. It's a new start for all of us. Later that night, I sat on the porch with Whiskers purring in my lap. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight for justice, the hard choices I'd had to make. We did it, Whiskers, I said softly, scratching behind his ears. We made it through. As I looked out over the sanctuary, at all the animals we'd saved, a sense of peace washed over me. This was where I belonged. This was my real family now. Sure, the road had been tough. There were days I doubted everything. But sitting here, surrounded by the fruits of our labor, I knew it had all been worth it. Mia's journey through betrayal and triumph has come to an end. Now I have a question for you. If you were in Mia's shoes, would you ever forgive your family for betraying your trust and selling your beloved pet, even if they claimed it was for your future benefit? Or do you believe some actions are truly unforgivable? Share your thoughts in the comments below.